Driver fired for taking a homeless man to the hospital. The next day, a stranger appears. Michael Reynolds was standing at his front door, looking at his empty wallet for the 10th time that morning. 43 years old, 20 years working as a private driver, and now unemployed for doing what he thought was right. The day before, he had disobeyed a direct order from his boss. The businessman, Richard Blackwood, wanted to arrive on time for the most important meeting of the quarter, but Michael couldn't ignore the man who had fainted on the sidewalk of Broadway in downtown New York City. He stopped the black Cadillac, put the homeless man in the back seat, and rushed to Memorial Hospital. When Blackwood discovered the blood on the Italian leather and the 2-hour delay, he didn't even want to hear explanations. "You're fired, Reynolds. Get your things and get out of my sight," were the last words he heard from the man he considered almost a friend. Now observing the quiet street in the Greenwich Village neighborhood where he lived in a small but well-kept house, Michael wondered how he was going to pay the month's bills. The severance money wouldn't last long, and at 43, it wouldn't be easy to find another job in the field. The doorbell rang, interrupting his gloomy thoughts. Michael opened the door and found himself facing an elegant man with neatly combed grey hair and an impeccable navy blue suit. He must have been about 60 and was carrying a brown leather briefcase. "Are you Michael Reynolds?" asked the visitor in a deep, polite voice. "That's me. Can I help you?" "My name is Dr. Robert Finch. I'm a lawyer. I need to speak with you about the man you saved yesterday." Michael felt a tightening in his chest. Had he done something wrong? Maybe the homeless man had some problem, and now he would be held responsible. "Please come in," he said, making way to the small living room. "Doctor." Robert looked around the simple but clean house. Old but well-maintained furniture, some plants in the window, family photos on the walls. He sat on the blue fabric sofa that had seen better days. "Do you have any idea who the man you helped is?" asked the lawyer, opening his briefcase. "A homeless man who fainted on the street. I didn't think twice, Doctor. I saw he needed help and—" "This man," Dr. Robert interrupted, taking a photo from the briefcase, "is named Andrew Thompson Wilson. Or rather, he was named that, because 8 months ago he disappeared from the face of the earth." Michael took the photograph. It was the same face, but in a very different version. Hair cut, beard trimmed, expensive suit, confident smile. Nothing that reminded him of the dirty, shabby man he had found on the sidewalk. "I don't understand, Doctor. This man in the photo looks—" "Rich?" "Yes, because he is. Andrew Wilson is the sole heir to a fortune estimated at $80 million. Owner of several companies, social projects, investments. At least he was, until he mysteriously disappeared after leaving a rehabilitation clinic. Michael's world seemed to spin. He had saved a millionaire and didn't even know it. But how did he— Amnesia. After a car accident almost a year ago, Andrew was hospitalized for months in a coma. When he woke up, he remembered almost nothing. The family made some progress with treatment, but one morning he simply vanished from the clinic. We've been searching for 8 months. Michael was still processing the information when Dr. Robert continued. The family is desperate. His sister, Mrs. Margaret, 72 years old, is his only living relative. She has been moving heaven and earth to find him. Hired detectives placed ads in the newspapers, offered a reward. Nothing. "And how did you know that I—" "The hospital called us last night. Andrew is registered as missing in all the city's hospitals. When they admitted him, the system automatically alerted us." Dr. Robert leaned forward with a serious expression. "Mr. Michael, I need your help. Andrew doesn't trust anyone at the hospital. The doctors said he gets agitated when someone approaches, but last night he repeatedly asked about the man with the car, about you." "Me? But we barely spoke." Sometimes a single act of kindness leaves a deeper mark than years of acquaintance. Andrew may not remember his own life, but he remembers you. Michael rubbed his face with his hands. It was too much information to process. "What exactly do you want from me, Doctor?" "That you help us. Andrew needs someone he trusts to recover. The doctors believe that with the right support his memory may gradually return." "And his family? That sister you mentioned?" Dr. Robert sighed deeply. Mrs. Margaret tried several times to talk to him when he was still lucid, before his disappearance. But Andrew would get agitated, saying he couldn't trust anyone in the family, that someone had tried to harm him. Someone in his own family. We don't know. The investigation into the accident was inconclusive. Andrew was driving alone on a quiet road when he hit a tree. There were no signs of other vehicles, but he insisted someone had forced him off the road. Michael stood up and walked to the window. Outside, life went on as normal. People going to work, children heading to school, the world turning as always. But inside, his reality had completely changed in 5 minutes. "Doctor, I'm just a simple driver. I don't have the knowledge to care for someone with amnesia." "We're not asking you to be a doctor, Mr. Reynolds, just to be a friend, to visit Andrew, talk with him, help him feel safe." "And in return?" Dr. Robert hesitated for a moment. "The family is willing to pay generous compensation for your time and dedication." "How much?" $5,000 a month, until Andrew fully recovers. Michael sat down again, stunned. It was almost double what he earned as a driver. "Why are you doing this? You could hire a private nurse, someone qualified." "We've tried. Andrew won't accept them. But last night, when he learned you had left the hospital, he was visibly upset. It's the first positive emotional reaction he's had in months." The phone rang in the kitchen. Michael excused himself and went to answer. It was his ex-wife, Emily. "Michael, I heard you got fired. Do you need anything?" "No, Em. Everything's fine." "I have a few free hours today. Can I stop by after my shift?" Emily had worked as a nurse at Memorial Hospital for 15 years. They had divorced 3 years earlier, but maintained a friendly relationship. "Actually, it would be good to talk. Something strange happened today. I'll be there at 2. And Michael, don't beat yourself up over the Blackwood situation. You did the right thing." When he returned to the room, Dr. Robert was watching him carefully. "Sorry, doctor. That was my ex-wife. She works at the hospital where Andrew is staying." "Perfect. She can help us better understand his condition." Michael sat down again, still confused. "Doctor, I need to think about this. It's a huge responsibility." "Of course. But don't take too long. Andrew needs stability. The longer he goes without positive references, the harder his recovery will be." Dr. Robert stood up and left a card on the table. "My number is there. Please call me by tomorrow morning." "And if I accept, what exactly happens?" "You would visit Andrew every day, talk with him, try to help him remember things. The doctors would provide specific guidance. The family would cover all expenses and still pay the monthly amount. And if his memory returns and he no longer wants my help, then you will have fulfilled your part. You'll receive an additional bonus and our eternal gratitude." Dr. Robert walked to the door but turned back before leaving. "Mr. Reynolds, may I ask you a personal question?" "Of course. Why did you stop to help Andrew yesterday? You knew you could lose your job." Michael thought for a moment. "My mother always said that you have to do what's right even when no one is watching, and even when it costs you." Dr. Robert smiled for the first time since he had arrived. "Then I'm sure Andrew will be in good hands." After the lawyer left, Michael was alone with his thoughts. He looked at the card on the table. Dr. Robert Finch, Civil and Family Law. A phone number and an address in the city centre. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. 2 hours later, Emily arrived as promised. She was a 40-year-old woman, brown hair always tied in a ponytail, green eyes that Michael still found pretty. She wore the hospital's blue uniform and carried a bag with sugar breads. "I brought your favorite," she said, placing the bag on the kitchen table. "Thanks, Em. Want some coffee?" "I'll have some." While Michael prepared the coffee, Emily watched her ex-husband's worried expression. "Tell me everything. What happened besides the firing?" Michael recounted the visit from Dr. Robert, Andrew's story, the proposal. Emily listened silently, occasionally raising her eyebrows. "Michael, I know that patient. Andrew Wilson. He arrived last night very confused. The on-call staff mentioned it was a strange case." "Strange how?" "First, because he's been in a homeless situation for months, but doesn't show signs of severe malnutrition or typical illnesses of someone living on the streets. Second, because even though he's confused, he has some habits that betray good upbringing. What kind of habits? He always thanks when someone does something for him, asks permission to go to the bathroom, doesn't eat with his hands. Small things that show he was well raised. Michael served the coffee and sat at the table with Emily. And about the amnesia? Neurological exams showed after effects of severe head trauma. It's consistent with the accident story. But there's something odd, Michael. What? During the night, he had some sleepwalking episodes. He walked the hallways murmuring numbers. Numbers? Yes. The on-duty nurse wrote them down. 8, 4, 2, 7, 5, 9, 3, 1. Always in the same sequence. Michael grabbed a paper and wrote down the numbers. Could it be some code? Or a password or an address? Andrew repeated it as if it were very important. Do you think I should accept the lawyer's proposal? Emily looked at Michael affectionately. She had known her ex-husband for 20 years and knew he always had a soft heart for people in trouble. It was exactly that trait that brought them together initially, but it also caused many conflicts during their marriage. Michael, financially it would be good for you, but are you sure you're not getting into a mess? How so? A missing fortune of 80 million, a mysterious accident, convenient amnesia. Doesn't that sound too much like a movie to you? You think it's a lie? I don't know, but I think you should investigate more before accepting. Michael drank his coffee thoughtfully. The lawyer said the family has been desperately searching for Andrew for 8 months. What if the family is exactly the problem? What if Andrew ran away on purpose? Emily's observation made Michael rethink the whole situation. Maybe there was more to it than met the eye. Can you find out more information about Andrew at the hospital? I can try, but I have to be discreet. And can you come with me to visit him today? I can. My shift starts at 6, but we have time. Michael decided he would visit Andrew before making any decision. He needed to understand the situation better and see for himself how the man behaved. On the way to the hospital, Emily shared more details about the case. You know, Michael, there's something else strange. Andrew arrived with a small recent scar on his right arm. It looks like an injection mark. Injection of what? We don't know. It could have been medication. It could have been something else. The blood tests didn't show anything specific, but some substances leave the body quickly. Are you suggesting he might have been drugged? I'm saying there are many unanswered questions. Memorial Hospital was as busy as ever. Emily used her badge to take Michael to the room where Andrew was staying. It was a private room on the 5th floor in the neurology wing. When they entered, Andrew was sitting on the bed, looking out the window. Upon seeing Michael, his face lit up. You came back, he said with a genuine smile. Hi, Andrew. How are you feeling? Better now that you're here. I've been trying to remember your name. Michael. Michael Reynolds. Michael, Andrew repeated, as if testing the sound. Michael, do you have family? The question took Michael by surprise. I have a daughter. She lives with her mother in Princeton. She must be a pretty girl. Yes, she is. Her name is Samantha. She's 15. Andrew smiled and looked at Emily. And this lady? This is Emily, my ex-wife. She works here at the hospital. Nice to meet you, Andrew, said Emily, closely observing his reactions. The pleasure is mine. Emily. It's a beautiful name. For the next 20 minutes, Michael made small talk with Andrew. The man seemed genuinely happy with the visit, but there was something in his eyes that bothered Michael, a shadow of fear that appeared when they talked about the past. Andrew, do you remember anything from before the accident? Andrew's expression changed immediately. He became tense and looked around, as if checking if anyone was listening. I can't talk about that here, he whispered. Why? They might be listening. Who? Andrew shook his head. I don't know, but I know I can't trust anyone. Only you, Michael. Emily and Michael exchanged glances. It was evident that Andrew had some kind of paranoia, but after everything they had discovered, perhaps there were reasons for it. Andrew, do these numbers mean anything to you? Emily showed him the paper where she had written down the sequence he murmured during his sleep. Andrew looked at the numbers and turned pale. Where did you get this? You say these numbers in your sleep. Andrew took the paper with trembling hands. It's important, very important, but I can't remember why. Could it be an address? Suggested Michael. Maybe. Or maybe it's the key to something. Andrew folded the paper and put it under his pillow. Michael, will you come back tomorrow? Yes, I will. Promise? I promise. When they left the room, Emily was visibly disturbed. Michael, that man is very afraid of something. I noticed that too. So now, what do you think I should do? I think you should accept the lawyer's offer. But be careful. Andrew needs someone he can trust, and for some reason, he trusts you. What if I'm getting into a dangerous situation? Then we'll figure it out together. But you can't abandon him now, Michael. He's alone and scared. Michael knew Emily was right. There was something about Andrew's vulnerability that touched his heart deeply. The man needed help, and Michael wouldn't be able to live with himself if he abandoned him. That night he called Dr. Robert. Doctor, I accept the offer, but I have some conditions. Go ahead. I want full transparency about Andrew's condition. I want access to all medical reports, and I want to meet his sister in person. All right, can you start tomorrow? I can. Great. I'll prepare the papers. And Mr. Michael? Yes? Thank you. You have no idea how much this means to the family. After hanging up, Michael sat on his porch gazing at the stars. He had a feeling his life was about to change drastically. He didn't know if for better or worse, but he knew there was no turning back. The next day, Dr. Robert arrived early at Michael's house with a briefcase full of documents. Here are the terms of the agreement, Mr. Reynolds, and also detailed information about Andrew's medical condition. Michael read everything carefully. The agreement was generous and transparent. In addition to the $5,000 monthly, it included life insurance, medical assistance, and a $20,000 bonus if Andrew fully recovered his memory. Dr. Robert, may I ask a question about the family? Of course. Andrew said yesterday that he can't trust anyone in the family. Why would he say that? Dr. Robert sighed. It's complicated, Mr. Reynolds. The Wilson family has always had its internal conflicts. Andrew was very close to his father, who passed away 2 years ago. Since then, there have been some disagreements about the direction of the family business. What kind of disagreements? Andrew wanted to expand the company's social projects. Margaret, his sister, thought it was an unnecessary expense. They had some heated arguments. And about the accident? Are there suspicions it wasn't accidental? Dr. Robert hesitated. Officially, it was an accident, but Andrew had been receiving some anonymous threats in the weeks before. What kind of threats? Phone calls telling him to stop the social projects, that he was messing with dangerous people. Michael felt a chill in his stomach. The situation was more complex than he had imagined. Dr. Robert, do you think Andrew is in any danger now? Honestly, I don't know, but I know he needs your help to recover, and perhaps by recovering his memory he can tell us what really happened. Michael signed the documents, and they agreed he would visit Andrew every morning. Dr. Robert also scheduled a meeting with Mrs. Margaret for the end of the week. When he arrived at the hospital, Andrew was waiting anxiously. Michael, you really came. I said I would. How did you sleep? Poorly. I had some strange dreams, with numbers and voices. What kind of voices? People arguing. A woman's voice saying I was making a mistake, that it would harm me. And a man's voice saying I didn't understand anything about business. Michael wrote everything down in a notebook he had bought especially for that. Andrew, do you remember any important woman in your life? I remember a feeling, as if there was someone who loved me very much but was always worried about me. Could it be your sister? Andrew shook his head. I don't know. But the feeling is good. Protective, you know. During the morning, Michael talked with Andrew about various subjects. He discovered the man had knowledge of classical music, spoke English fluently, and knew a lot about art. They were clues to a refined education. Andrew, would you like to leave the room for a bit? We can walk through the hallways. Can I really? Of course, you're not trapped here. They walked through the hospital, and Michael noticed how Andrew observed everything attentively. He stopped to read the doctor's names on the plaques, paid attention to the room numbers. "Michael, can I tell you something?" "Of course." "I'm afraid to remember." "Why? What if I'm a bad person? What if I did horrible things?" Michael stopped and looked Andrew in the eyes. "Andrew, I'll tell you something. Bad people don't worry about being bad. The fact that you have this concern already shows you have a good heart." Andrew smiled but still seemed unsure. "What if my family doesn't like who I became? Then it's the family that's no good, not you." This conversation seemed to reassure Andrew a bit. They returned to the room, and he told Michael about some memory flashes he had been having. "I remember being in a large room with many people, everyone in suits and ties. And I was talking about poor children, I think. Like it was a work meeting." "Yes. And people seemed annoyed with me." "Why were you talking about poor children?" "I don't know, but it was important. Very important." Michael made more notes. Bit by bit, he was putting together a puzzle of Andrew's life. By late morning, a nurse arrived with medication. "Time for your medicine, Mr. Andrew." Andrew looked at the pills suspiciously. "What is this?" "Medication to help with your recovery," the nurse replied. "What kind of medication?" The nurse checked the chart. "An anti-inflammatory for the brain and a mild anti-anxiety medication." Andrew looked at Michael. "What do you think?" Michael wasn't a doctor, but he understood that Andrew was asking for his opinion as someone he trusted. "Andrew, do you want me to talk to your doctor about these medications?" "I do." Michael accompanied Andrew to the appointment with the neurologist, Dr. Harold Matthews, a bald, bespectacled man in his 50s. "Mr. Reynolds, right? I heard you'll be accompanying Andrew." "That's right, doctor. He's worried about the medications." "It's natural. Patients with amnesia often develop distrust, but the medications are essential for recovery. Can I know exactly what each one does?" Dr. Matthews explained each medication in detail. Everything seemed legitimate and necessary. "Doctor, how long does it normally take for memory to return in cases like Andrew's?" "It varies greatly. It could be weeks, months, or years. In some cases, memory returns gradually. In others, it all comes back at once." "And is there anything that can speed up the process?" "Familiar stimuli help. Photos, music, familiar places, personal items." Michael made mental notes about that. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. After the appointment, Michael took Andrew back to the room and said goodbye until the next day. As he left the hospital, he ran into Emily in the hallway. "How was it today?" "Strange. Andrew is remembering some things, but always related to conflicts, as if his life before the accident was full of problems." "Michael, I found out something interesting about Andrew." "What?" "I spoke with a colleague who works in the administrative department. Andrew Wilson is registered as a VIP patient. Someone is paying extra for his hospitalization. The lawyer mentioned that the family would cover all expenses." "Yes, but the strange thing is that the payment isn't coming from the family. It's coming from a company." "Which company?" "Blackwood Investments." Michael felt as if he'd been punched in the stomach. "Blackwood? Like Richard Blackwood, my former boss?" "The same. Michael, the man who fired you is paying for Andrew's treatment." Michael's world collapsed again. Nothing made sense. Why would Blackwood be paying for Andrew's treatment? And why hadn't he mentioned it when he fired Michael? Are you sure?" "Absolutely, I saw the documents." But this doesn't make any sense, unless Blackwood knows Andrew from somewhere." Michael spent the rest of the day trying to understand the connection between his former boss and Andrew. He decided he would confront Dr. Robert about it the next day. That night he received an unexpected call. "Michael Reynolds?" The voice was female, elderly. "Yes, who's speaking?" "My name is Margaret Wilson. I'm Andrew's sister." "Mrs. Margaret, Dr. Robert said you wanted to meet me." "Yes, but it can't be at the place we arranged. There are people watching me." "What do you mean, watching?" "It's a long story, Michael. May I call you Michael?" "Of course, Mrs. Margaret." "Michael, my brother is in danger, real danger. And now you might be too." I don't understand. Andrew discovered something he shouldn't have. That's why they tried to silence him. Do you know who? I have my suspicions, but I can't talk about it over the phone. Can we meet tomorrow? Where? Do you know Cathedral Square? There's a small church on the right side of the cathedral, Third Carmelite Church. Let's meet there at 3 in the afternoon. How will I recognize you? I'll be wearing a blue dress and a black hat. And Michael. Yes? Don't tell anyone about our meeting, not even Dr. Robert. Why? Because we don't know who we can trust. The call ended, leaving Michael even more confused. Now Mrs. Margaret was suggesting that not even his own lawyer was trustworthy. The next day Michael visited Andrew as usual, but he was distant, worried about everything he had discovered. "Michael, are you okay?" asked Andrew. "Yes, just thinking about some things. Can I help?" Michael looked at Andrew and made a decision. "Andrew, do you know a man named Richard Blackwood?" Andrew's reaction was immediate and violent. He turned pale, started trembling, and grabbed Michael's arm. "Where did you hear that name?" "He's my former boss. I worked for him until 2 days ago. Michael, you have to stay away from him right now." "Why?" "I don't remember well, but that name scares me terribly." Andrew started hyperventilating. Michael calmed him down and called the nurse. "Mr. Andrew, what happened?" asked the nurse. "He had an anxiety attack," explained Michael. The nurse gave Andrew a sedative, and he gradually calmed down. "Michael," whispered Andrew, holding his hand. "Promise me you'll be careful." "I promise." "And promise you won't abandon me." "I promise that too." Andrew closed his eyes and fell asleep due to the sedative. Michael stayed by the bed, watching the man's peaceful face. There was something very wrong with this whole story, and he was determined to find out what. At 2:30 in the afternoon, Michael arrived at Cathedral Square. He found the Third Carmelite Church and waited. Gradually, people came and went from the small church. At exactly 3 o'clock, an elegant lady approached. Mrs. Margaret Wilson was 72 years old, but she appeared to be a woman who had been very beautiful in her youth. She wore a discreet blue dress, a black hat, and carried a brown leather purse. Her blue eyes were just like Andrew's, but they carried a deep sadness. "Michael? Mrs. Margaret, it's a pleasure to meet you. Let's go inside the church. It's safer in there." They sat on a bench at the back of the church. There were few people, mostly elderly individuals praying. "Michael, first I want to thank you for taking care of my brother. He's all I have in the world." "You're welcome, Mrs. Margaret, but you said he's in danger." "Andrew discovered that someone is embezzling money from our company's social projects. A lot of money." "How much?" "About 15 million reais over the last 3 years. Michael whistled softly. "And who's embezzling it?" "Someone inside the company, with access to the accounts. Andrew was investigating when he had the accident." "Do you think the accident was intentional?" "I'm sure of it. The day before, Andrew called me saying he had discovered who was responsible. He was going to report it the next day." "And who was it?" Mrs. Margaret looked around before answering. "Richard Blackwood." Michael felt his blood run cold. "Blackwood? But how?" "Blackwood has been our partner in several social projects for 5 years. He provided financial consulting and mediated some investments. He had access to several accounts. Mrs. Margaret, Blackwood is paying for Andrew's treatment at the hospital." The elderly woman was shocked. "How do you know that?" "My ex-wife works there and found out." "Mrs. Margaret, Blackwood fired me precisely because I helped Andrew." "Do you think he knew who Andrew was?" "You must know. That's why you're paying for the treatment. You want to keep Andrew close, under control." "But why didn't Dr. Robert tell me this?" Mrs. Margaret hesitated. "Michael, I need to tell you something else. Dr. Robert isn't working for me." "What do you mean?" "I never hired him. When I found out Andrew had been located, I went to the hospital. That's where I discovered a lawyer was already handling the case." Michael stood up, stunned. "So who hired Dr. Robert?" "Probably Blackwood, to convince you to take care of Andrew and maintain control over the situation." "Mrs. Margaret, does this mean—" "That you're being used, Michael, and that my brother is still in danger." Michael sat down again, trying to process all the information. What should we do? First, don't let anyone know we talked. Second, continue caring for Andrew as if nothing has changed. Third, try to find out where Andrew hid the evidence against Blackwood. What evidence? Andrew told me he had copied incriminating documents. He stored everything in a safe place before the accident. And you don't know where? No. But perhaps Andrew will remember if he recovers his memory. Mrs. Margaret, those numbers, Andrew murmurs in his sleep. What numbers? Michael told her about the number sequence. Mrs. Margaret wrote the numbers in a notebook. It could be a safe combination, or an address, or even coordinates. Coordinates? Andrew was always fascinated by geography. As a child, he memorized coordinates of various places. Michael looked at the numbers again. 8, 4, 2, 7, 5, 9, 3, 1. Mrs. Margaret, could these numbers form latitude and longitude coordinates? They could, but we'd need to know how to separate them. I can try to figure it out. Mrs. Margaret took Michael's hand. Be very careful. If Blackwood suspects you know the truth, he might try to harm you. And if he tries to do something to Andrew? That's why you need to keep visiting my brother normally. Be his eyes and ears while he's recovering his memory. How can I contact you? Mrs. Margaret wrote a number on a piece of paper. This is my maid Constance's phone number. She's worked for me for 30 years, completely trustworthy. If you need to speak with me, call her and ask for Mrs. Beatrice. It's a code we arranged. Mrs. Beatrice, understood. Michael, one more thing. Andrew has a crescent moon-shaped birthmark on his left shoulder. If someone tries to impersonate him, you'll be able to tell. Do you really think that's possible? With this much money involved, anything is possible. They left the church separately. Michael's head was spinning. Everything he believed about the situation had completely changed. Now he knew he was in the middle of a conspiracy much larger and more dangerous than he had imagined. That night, he researched geographic coordinates online. He discovered Andrew's number sequence could be separated as 8.427 and 59.31, or 84.227 and 593.1, or various other combinations. He tested some possibilities on an online map, but none seemed to make sense for New York City. Perhaps negative signs or commas in different positions were needed. The next day he visited Andrew as usual, but now observing everything much more carefully. He noticed there was a new nurse on the floor, a burly man who seemed more like a bodyguard than a healthcare professional. Andrew, how did you sleep? Better. I had a different dream yesterday. What do you mean different? I dreamed of a room full of files, and a woman showing me papers, saying it was very important to store everything. What woman? An older woman with greying hair. She called me little brother. Michael smiled. Andrew was starting to remember Mrs. Margaret. Andrew, do you remember where these files were? In a room with a large window overlooking a park, and there was a small black safe hidden behind a bookcase. Do you remember the safe's combination? Andrew thought for a moment. Numbers. Always important numbers, but I can't recall which ones. Michael decided to test something. Andrew, do these numbers mean anything to you? 84275931? Andrew's reaction was intense, but this time not from fear. He closed his eyes and began to smile. The safe. It's the safe's combination. Are you sure? Yes, but I don't remember where the safe is. Andrew, you said the room overlooks a park. Which park would that be? A park with a lake and many trees, and there were children playing. Michael thought of the parks in New York City that had those features. It could be Central Park, Bryant Park, or several others. Andrew, was this room in a tall building? Yes, very tall. You could see the whole city. During the visit, Michael noticed that the new nurse was always nearby, seemingly organizing medications, but obviously paying attention to the conversation. Andrew, how about we take a walk today? Good idea. They left the room and walked through the halls. Michael made sure they weren't being followed before speaking. Andrew, I need to tell you something important. What? Yesterday I spoke with your sister. Andrew stopped walking. My sister? What is she like? A very elegant lady with greying hair. She loves you very much and is worried about you. And why doesn't she come visit me? Because you both might be in danger. Someone doesn't want you to regain your memory. Andrew looked around nervously. Michael, I'm afraid to remember. What if it's something terrible? Andrew, your sister told me that you discovered someone was stealing money meant to help poor children. You are a hero, not a villain. Stealing money from children? Yes, and you were trying to stop it when you had the accident. Andrew was silent for a long time. Michael, I need to remember where the papers are that prove this. We'll find out together, but we have to be careful. They returned to the room, and Michael said goodbye, promising to come back the next day. As he left the hospital, he noticed a black car followed him for a few blocks before disappearing into traffic. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. That night, Michael decided to research more about Blackwood and Andrew's company. He found several reports about the social projects of Wilson Investments, always mentioning the partnership with Blackwood Consulting. A report from 2 years ago showed Andrew inaugurating a school in Liberty Heights, alongside Blackwood. In the photo, the two seemed like close friends. Michael also found a report about Andrew's accident. The article mentioned that he was returning from a meeting when he lost control of the vehicle on Interstate 95. There were no witnesses. The next day, upon arriving at the hospital, Michael found Andrew very agitated. Michael, I remembered something else. What is it? The room with the safe. It's in a building on Fifth Avenue. It's an office my family has had for years. Andrew, do you remember the building number? Not exactly, but I remember it's across from a very famous building, with an antenna on top, Michael thought. On Fifth Avenue there were several buildings with antennas, but the most famous was the Empire State Building. Andrew, could it be the building across from the Empire State Building? It could be, and Michael, I remembered something else. Before the accident, I was going to meet someone who had important information about the theft. Who? An accountant who worked for Blackwood. Michael felt his stomach tighten. Andrew, did you manage to meet this accountant? I don't know. I don't remember anything after leaving the office that afternoon. What's the accountant's name? Joseph Peters. He called saying he'd discovered something serious and wanted to show me. Michael wrote down the name. Maybe he could find Joseph Peters and discover what he knew. Andrew, did you trust this Joseph? Yes. He'd worked with us for years before going to Blackwood's company. He was honest. And why did he go work for Blackwood? Blackwood offered a much better salary. Joseph had a sick daughter and needed the money. During the conversation, Michael noticed the burly nurse appeared several times in the hallway, always finding excuses to pass near the room. Andrew, we'll do a test today. What kind of test? I'll show you some photos, and you tell me if you recognize anyone. Michael had printed photos of Blackwood he found online. He wanted to see Andrew's reaction upon seeing them. When he showed the first photo, Andrew became visibly disturbed. I know this person, but I don't remember exactly from where. Is he a good or bad man? Bad. I'm sure he's bad. I feel like running when I see this face. Michael quickly put away the photos when he saw the nurse approaching. Mr. Andrew, time for your medication. Can you wait a bit? Asked Michael. No, sir. It needs to be at the right time. The nurse insisted on giving the medication on time, and Michael noticed he carefully observed Andrew's reaction. After taking the medication, Andrew became drowsy and confused. It was always like this after the medication. Michael, don't go. I won't. I'll stay until you fall asleep. Andrew fell asleep within minutes. Michael took the opportunity to talk with Emily, who was on duty. This new nurse, the big guy, is he really from this hospital? Which nurse? A burly man, bald, who's always near Andrew's room. Michael, we don't have any nurse matching that description on our staff. What do you mean? All the nurses on this floor are women, except Mark, who's thin and has hair. Michael felt a chill. M. Then who is that man? I don't know, but I'll find out. Can you describe him better? Michael described the man in detail. Emily promised to check with hospital security. Michael, what if this man is here to watch Andrew? Or to harm him? We need to tell someone. But who? We don't even know who to trust. Emily thought for a moment. I can talk to the hospital's head of security. He's a serious person. Do that. And Em, can you find out if anyone's been tampering with Andrew's medication? I can check. Why? He gets very drowsy after taking the medicine, more than he should. I'll investigate that too. Michael left the hospital worried. Things were getting more and more dangerous. That afternoon, he decided to look for information about Joseph Peters. He called some acquaintances who worked in the accounting field, but no one knew him. Finally, through an accountant friend, he got a phone number for a Joseph Peters who had worked in the field. He called nervous. Hello, Mr. Joseph Peters? Yes, who's speaking? My name is Michael Reynolds. I'd like to talk with you about Andrew Wilson. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I don't know any Andrew Wilson. Sir, I know you worked for Blackwood and that you had important information. I can't talk about that. Please don't call me again. The call ended abruptly. Michael tried calling again, but the phone was turned off. He decided to try a different approach. The next day, instead of going straight to the hospital, he stopped by Fifth Avenue looking for the building where Andrew's office might be. He found a commercial building across from the Empire State Building, the Chrysler Building. It was an old building but well maintained with several companies. Michael entered the lobby and spoke with the doorman. Good morning. Do you have any companies from the Wilson family here? Wilson Investments, 15th floor. But it's been closed for about 8 months. Closed? Yes. After the owner disappeared, the family temporarily closed the office. Do you know if anyone from the family stops by here occasionally? Sometimes an elderly lady comes, Mrs. Margaret, a very refined person. Michael went up to the 15th floor. The office door was closed, but through the frosted glass he could see furniture inside. He returned to the lobby and tried to convince the doorman to let him go up. Sir, I work for the Wilson family. I need to retrieve some important documents. I can't let you up without written authorization. Michael understood he would need Mrs. Margaret's help to enter the office. He called the maid's number and asked to speak with Mrs. Beatrice. Mrs. Margaret? It's Michael. Michael, how is Andrew? Better. He's remembering more things, including the office on Fifth Avenue. That's great. Mrs. Margaret, I need to get into the office to look for the safe. Can you give me authorization? I can. Let's meet there this afternoon. And there's something else. There's a strange man at the hospital, pretending to be a nurse but watching Andrew. That's very concerning. We'll have to get Andrew out of there. How? I don't know yet, but I'll think of something. At 4 in the afternoon, Michael met Mrs. Margaret in the lobby of the Chrysler Building. She spoke with the doorman and managed to get access to the office. They went up together in the elevator. Michael, how long has it been since you last saw your former boss, Blackwood? Since he fired me 3 days ago. Has he tried to contact you after that? No. Why? Because if he knew you were taking care of Andrew, he would have already tried something. They arrived at the office. It was a spacious area with a view of Bryant Park. There were several smaller rooms and a main room with a large table and shelves full of books and documents. This was Andrew's room, said Mrs. Margaret, opening a door. The room matched exactly the description Andrew had given. A large window overlooking the park, shelves with books and documents. Michael began searching behind the shelves. On the third shelf, he found a small black safe built into the wall. Found it, Mrs. Margaret approached. The safe had a simple numeric keypad. Michael entered the sequence Andrew had been murmuring, 842759131. The safe opened with a soft click. Inside was a folder with documents, some photos, and a flash drive. Mrs. Margaret, I think we've found the evidence. They quickly left the building and went to Mrs. Margaret's house on a quiet street in the Upper East Side. It was an old, large, well-maintained house with a front garden. In the living room, they examined the contents of the safe. The documents showed suspicious money transfers from social projects to Blackwood's personal accounts. There were also copies of emails where Blackwood instructed Joseph Peters to alter financial reports. "Michael, this is enough evidence to put Blackwood in jail," said Mrs. Margaret. "And the photos?" The photos showed Blackwood in meetings with people who looked questionable. One photo caught Michael's attention, Blackwood handing an envelope to a burly man. "Mrs. Margaret, this man in the photo is the same one pretending to be a nurse at the hospital. So Blackwood put someone to watch Andrew. Or to do something worse." Mrs. Margaret turned pale. "We have to get Andrew out of the hospital today." "How? He's officially admitted." "I'll use my contacts. I have friends in the hospital administration." Mrs. Margaret called several people, explaining the situation. Finally, she got authorization to transfer Andrew to a private clinic where she had acquaintances. "Michael, I did it. We can transfer Andrew today. And Dr. Robert, he'll find out. Let him find out. Now we know he's not working for me." "Mrs. Margaret, what if Blackwood discovers where we transferred Andrew?" "That's why we're taking him to a place Blackwood doesn't know. The clinic is in Greenwich, Connecticut, outside of New York City." Michael agreed with the plan. They arrived at the hospital at 7 in the evening. Andrew was awake and was happy to see the two together. "Andrew, this is your sister, Margaret." Andrew looked at the elderly woman and smiled. "Little brother," said Mrs. Margaret, with tears in her eyes. "I remember you," said Andrew, moved. "You always protected me when we were little, and I will still protect you." Michael explained to Andrew that they were going to transfer him to another place, safer. "Why am I not safe here?" "Because bad people want to stop you from remembering important things." Andrew accepted the transfer without question. He trusted Michael completely and was beginning to trust Mrs. Margaret as well. The transfer was done discreetly, through the ambulance from the Greenwich Clinic itself. Michael and Mrs. Margaret accompanied Andrew throughout the journey. St. Mary's Clinic was located in a rural area of Greenwich, surrounded by mountains and lots of greenery. It was a calm and safe environment. "Andrew, you'll like it here," said Michael. "You really will. It's very similar to the farm where we spent vacations when we were children," added Mrs. Margaret. Andrew was settled in a comfortable room with a view of the mountains. The doctor in charge, Dr. Anthony Rivers, was a personal friend of Mrs. Margaret and guaranteed total discretion about Andrew's presence at the clinic. "Mrs. Margaret, Andrew is safe here. No one will find out where he is." "Doctor, how long does he need to stay hospitalized?" "From the tests you brought, he can be discharged in a few days. The important thing now is the recovery of his memory." That night, Michael slept in a guest room at the clinic. Mrs. Margaret stayed at a nearby hotel. The next day, Michael visited Andrew early in the morning. "How did you sleep?" "Very well, better than at the other hospital. And you know what else?" "What?" "I remembered more things. I remembered the conversation with Joseph the day before the accident." "What did he tell you?" "That Blackwood had been embezzling money for years, that he had created fake accounts in the name of the social projects, but the money went to his personal accounts." "And why did Joseph decide to tell you this?" "Because he found out that Blackwood was planning to blame him when the fraud was discovered. Joseph was going to be the scapegoat." "Andrew, do you remember if Joseph gave you any evidence?" "Yes, he gave me a flash drive with copies of all the incriminating documents." "And what did you do with that flash drive?" Andrew thought for a moment. "I put it in the safe, along with other evidence I had gathered." Michael smiled. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. "Andrew, we found the safe. All the evidence is with us now. So we can stop Blackwood?" "We can, but first we have to make sure you're completely safe." During the morning, Mrs. Margaret arrived with worrying news. "Michael, Blackwood found out that Andrew is no longer at the hospital." "How do you know?" "My friend in the hospital administration called me. Blackwood showed up there this morning, furious, demanding to know where Andrew had been transferred." "And did they tell him?" "No, but he threatened to sue the hospital for unauthorized transfer." "Mrs. Margaret, could Blackwood find out where we are?" "It's possible. We have to act quickly." "What do you suggest?" "That we take the evidence to the district attorney's office today." Michael agreed. It was time to report Blackwood officially. But before leaving the clinic, he received a call on his cell phone. It was an unknown number. Michael Reynolds? Yes, who's speaking? My name is Joseph Peters. I need to speak with you urgently. Michael was surprised. It was the second time Joseph had called, but this time he seemed desperate. Mr. Joseph, where are you? I'm in hiding. Blackwood found out I spoke with Andrew before the accident. He's looking for me. Do you want to meet with us? Yes, I have more important information, but I can't talk on the phone. Where can we meet? Do you know the town of Greenwich, Connecticut? Michael looked at Mrs. Margaret, surprised. We do. There's an old church in the town centre, Rosary Church. We can meet there at 2 in the afternoon. How will we recognize you? I'll be wearing a blue shirt and a black cap. And you? We'll be with an elderly lady with grey hair. All right. And Michael? Yes? Be very careful. Blackwood isn't playing around. The call ended. Michael and Mrs. Margaret spoke with Dr. Anthony about how to keep Andrew safe during their absence. Doctor, no one can know Andrew is here. Don't worry, I'll instruct the entire team about absolute confidentiality. At 2 in the afternoon, Michael and Mrs. Margaret arrived at Rosary Church in downtown Greenwich. It was a small, cozy, colonial church. They found Joseph Peters sitting on a bench in the back. He was a thin, 50-year-old man with a nervous look. He seemed very scared. Mr. Joseph? Asked Michael. Yes. Are you Michael and Mrs. Margaret? We are. Joseph looked around before speaking. Blackwood is desperate. Yesterday he found out Andrew is no longer in the hospital and he was furious. How do you know? Because he called me threatening. He said if I don't tell him where Andrew is, he'll harm my daughter. Your daughter? She's 20 years old and studies in college. Blackwood knows where she studies, where she lives. He's blackmailing me. Mrs. Margaret was outraged. That man has no limits. That's why I decided to talk to you. I can't stay silent anymore. Joseph told details about how Blackwood organized the money diversions. There were offshore accounts, shell companies, and a complex money laundering network. Mr. Joseph, do you have proof of all this? I do. I copied everything before leaving his company. Why did you leave? Because I found out he was planning to frame me. He was going to forge documents showing I was responsible for the diversions. And why didn't you report it before? Fear. Blackwood has powerful contacts, politicians, judges, influential people. Michael and Mrs. Margaret exchanged glances. The situation was more complicated than they had imagined. Mr. Joseph, do you want to go with us to the district attorney's office to file a report? I do. But first we need to ensure my daughter's safety. How? She's at college now. If we can get her out of there and take her to a safe place, I can speak with the authorities. Michael understood they had no choice. They needed to protect Joseph's daughter to secure his cooperation in the report. Where is the college? In New York City, NYU, University campus. Let's go get her now. They left the church together. Michael drove Mrs. Margaret's car, a discreet black SUV. Joseph was in the front seat giving directions. Mr. Joseph, does your daughter know about the danger she's in? No, I didn't want to scare her. I just told her I had some problems at work. What's her name? Amanda. Amanda Peters. The trip to New York City took an hour. Along the way, Joseph told more details about Blackwood. He didn't start as a criminal. At first he was a serious consultant, but gradually he became corrupt. The easy money from the diversions addicted him. And when did the diversions start? About 4 years ago. At first they were small amounts that no one noticed, but it gradually increased. And Andrew, when did he find out? About 8 months ago. He was always very detail-oriented with the social project accounts. He noticed some inconsistencies and started investigating. Was that when he asked for your help? Yes. I was still working for Blackwood at the time, but Andrew had been my friend for years. I decided to help him. They arrived at the university campus in the middle of the afternoon. Joseph called Amanda. Honey, where are you? At the library, Dad. Why? I need to pick you up now. It's urgent. Did something happen? I'll explain later. Meet me at the main gate in 10 minutes. Okay, Dad. They went to the main gate and waited. Soon a pretty young woman with curly hair and a backpack appeared. She approached the car with a worried expression. "Dad, what's going on? Amanda, get in the car. I'll explain everything." On the way back to Greenwich, Connecticut, Joseph told his daughter about Blackwood's embezzlement, the threats, and the danger she was in. "Dad, why didn't you tell me this before? I didn't want to worry you, but now I have no choice." Amanda was frightened but understood the seriousness of the situation. "And now, what are we going to do?" "We're going to report Blackwood, but first we're taking you to a safe place." Michael suggested that Amanda stay at the clinic with Andrew while they went to the district attorney's office. It's a safe and discreet place. No one will find out she's there. They arrived at the clinic late in the afternoon. Dr. Anthony received Amanda kindly and put her in a room near Andrew's. "How is Andrew?" asked Mrs. Margaret. "Very well. He spent the day reading and doing memory exercises. He remembered a few more things." "What kind of things?" "Details about the meetings with Blackwood, about the forged signatures, about how Blackwood manipulated the financial reports." Michael visited Andrew briefly. "How are you?" "Much better." "And Michael, I remembered something very important." "What?" "Blackwood wasn't working alone. He had a partner." "Who?" "A woman named Victoria Andrews. She was responsible for the legal side of the embezzlement." "What kind of legal side?" "Creating fake contracts, setting up shell companies, forging documents. She was a lawyer." Michael wrote down the name, another piece of the puzzle. "Andrew, do you know where I can find this Victoria?" "She had an office on Broadway, but I don't know if she's still there." The next day, Michael, Mrs. Margaret, and Joseph went to the district attorney's office in New York City. They were received by prosecutor Dr. Frank Murray, a serious man experienced in financial crimes. "Gentlemen, I understand you have information about embezzlement of public funds." Mrs. Margaret explained the whole situation. Dr. Murray analyzed the documents they brought and was impressed by the amount of evidence. "These documents are very convincing. We'll open an investigation immediately." "Doctor, is there any risk to the people involved in the report?" asked Michael. "There always is. That's why we'll request police protection for you." "And how long until Blackwood is arrested?" "If the evidence is confirmed, we can request preventive detention in a few days." Joseph handed over his copies of the documents and gave a detailed statement. Dr. Murray assured that everything would be thoroughly investigated. "Gentlemen, we also need Mr. Andrew Wilson's statement. When can he come here?" "He's still recovering, Doctor, but it could be in a few days." "All right, we'll start with what we have." They left the district attorney's office with the feeling that justice would finally be served. But Michael was still worried about everyone's safety. On the way back to Greenwich, Connecticut, Mrs. Margaret received a call. "Hello? Mrs. Margaret? This is Dr. Anthony. We have a problem." "What happened?" "A man was here looking for information about you. He said he was from the police but didn't show identification." "What did he look like?" "Stocky, bald. The same description you gave of the man who was watching Andrew at the hospital." Michael felt his blood run cold. "Doctor, are Andrew and Amanda okay?" "They are." "We hid when the man arrived. He didn't see them." "Let's go back there now." They arrived at the clinic in a state of alert. Dr. Anthony received them with a worried expression. "The man stayed about 20 minutes here. He asked many questions about you, wanted to know if you had registered as visitors." "And the staff, did they say anything?" "No, I instructed everyone not to say anything, but he might come back." Michael went to speak with Andrew and Amanda. "How are you?" "Fine, but scared," Amanda replied. "Andrew, do you remember anything else that could help us stop Blackwood quickly?" "I remember he kept important documents in a house he had at the beach." "Which beach?" "The Hamptons, a big house by the sea." "Do you know the address?" "Not exactly, but I remember it was on a street called Flower Street, I think." Michael wrote down the information. Perhaps there was more evidence at Blackwood's beach house. "Andrew, we also discovered that Blackwood had a partner, Victoria Andrews." "Oh, yes. Now I remember her. A tall blonde woman, very intelligent but unscrupulous. Do you know if she still works with Blackwood?" "I think so. They were very close, maybe even dating." Mrs. Margaret suggested they contact the district attorney to also investigate the house in the Hamptons. That's a good idea. The more evidence we have, the better. Michael called Dr. Murray and reported the new information. Mr. Michael, we'll investigate the house in the Hamptons too, and I'll request a search and seizure warrant for Victoria Andrews' office. Doctor, we're worried about our safety. Blackwood already found out where we were. I'll arrange police protection immediately. Thank you, Doctor. That night, 2 police officers arrived at the clinic to provide protection for the location. Michael felt more at ease. Andrew, tomorrow you might have to go to the district attorney's office to give your testimony. I'm ready. I want Blackwood to pay for what he did. And you, Amanda, how are you feeling? Scared, but determined to help my father. He was very brave in reporting Blackwood. All of you were brave. Michael spent another night at the clinic. He was anxious for everything to be resolved soon. The next day, they received a call from Dr. Murray with good news. Mr. Michael, we found more evidence at the house in the Hamptons. Blackwood really kept important documents there. What kind of documents? Fake contracts, receipts of irregular payments, correspondence with politicians. It's a real criminal archive. And Victoria Andrews? Arrested last night. She was trying to flee the country when we caught her at the airport. And Blackwood? We haven't found him yet. It seems he disappeared, but all his assets have been frozen. Michael was worried about Blackwood being on the run. Doctor, while he's free, are we in danger? Police protection continues, and we're closing in to find him. In the late morning, Andrew, Joseph, and Mrs. Margaret went to the district attorney's office to give their testimony. Michael stayed at the clinic with Amanda and the police officers. Michael, do you think everything will turn out all right? Asked Amanda. I think so. We have a lot of evidence against Blackwood. And my father? Will he have problems for having participated in the schemes? Your father was a victim, Amanda. He helped report Blackwood. That counts a lot in his favor. In the afternoon, when the group returned from the district attorney's office, they brought good news. How did it go? Asked Michael. Very well, replied Mrs. Margaret. The district attorney said he has enough evidence to convict Blackwood. And Andrew? I remembered practically everything during the testimony, said Andrew, smiling. Even things I wasn't sure about. What kind of things? Conversations I had with Blackwood, where he confessed to the embezzlements. Meetings where he planned to incriminate other people. Michael was pleased with Andrew's memory recovery. And now, what happens? Now we wait for Blackwood to be arrested, said Joseph. But the wait didn't last long. The next day, Dr. Murray called with the news everyone was expecting. Mr. Michael, we arrested Blackwood. He was hiding on a farm in Michigan. How did you find him? Victoria Andrews collaborated with the investigation. She told us where he was. And now? Now he'll answer for all his crimes. Embezzlement of public funds, document forgery, threats, attempted homicide. Attempted homicide. We discovered that Andrews' accident wasn't accidental. Blackwood hired the man you saw at the hospital to force Andrew off the road. Michael was shocked by the revelation. Doctor, does that mean that Blackwood tried to kill Andrew to prevent him from reporting the embezzlement? And the man he hired? He was also arrested, confessed everything in exchange for a lighter sentence. Michael rushed to tell the news to the others. Andrew, Blackwood was arrested. Really? Andrew got up from the bed, emotional. Yes, and we discovered your accident was indeed intentional. I knew it. I always knew it wasn't an accident. Mrs. Margaret cried with relief. Finally, my brother is safe. Amanda hugged her father. Dad, you were a hero. No, daughter. The hero was Michael. If he hadn't stopped to help Andrew that day, none of this would have happened. Michael was moved by the recognition. I just did what I thought was right. And you changed many people's lives, said Andrew. Michael, you saved millions of dollars that belonged to poor children. A few days later, when all legal procedures were completed, Andrew was medically discharged. His memory had completely returned. Michael, how can I thank you for everything you've done? No need to thank me, Andrew. Seeing you well is the best thanks. No, Michael, I want to do something for you. What? I want you to work with me. I'm resuming the social projects and need someone trustworthy to help me. Michael was surprised by the proposal. But I'm a driver, Andrew. I don't understand social projects. You understand people, and that's what matters most. Mrs. Margaret supported the idea. Michael, you would be perfect to work with us. What would my role be? Coordinator of Solidarity Transportation, said Andrew. We'll create a fleet of community ambulances to take needy people to the hospital for free. Michael was moved. It was exactly the kind of work he had always dreamed of doing. Andrew, I accept. 2 months later, Michael was driving the first ambulance of the Wilson Solidarity Fleet. Beside him, Andrew coordinated the project that had already helped hundreds of needy families. Michael, remember the day you saved me on the sidewalk of Broadway? I remember. You didn't just save my life. You saved the lives of all the children who will benefit from the social projects. Michael smiled, driving through the city while taking a sick child to the hospital. Andrew, do you think Blackwood will really pay for what he did? Yes, he will. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison, and Victoria got 10 years. And the embezzled money? Almost all of it was recovered. It will go back to the social projects. In the back of the ambulance, the sick child's mother held her son's hand and looked at Michael with gratitude. Thank you, Mr. Michael. You're an angel. Michael looked in the rearview mirror and smiled. You're welcome, Mrs. Mary. That's what we're here for. Andrew watched the scene and was moved. Michael, do you know what the best part of this whole story was? What? Discovering that there are people like you in the world, people who do the right thing even when it's difficult. And I discovered that sometimes a single action can change many lives. Not just change, save. The ambulance continued through the city, bringing hope to those who needed it most. Michael had lost a job for doing what he thought was right, but he had gained something much greater, the chance to make a difference in the lives of hundreds of people. The following week, Joseph Peters was hired as the accountant for the social projects, responsible for ensuring total transparency in the resources. Amanda returned to college, but in her free time she volunteered to help with the projects. Emily, Michael's ex-wife, also joined the team as the medical coordinator for the ambulances. Michael, you've managed to bring together a family here, she said, watching the team working. A family that formed by chance, but will stay together by choice. Mrs. Margaret, at 72 years old, took over as president of the company and dedicated herself fully to the social projects. You know, Michael, my brother always said that the best things in life happen when we help others. He was right. And you proved it. 6 months after the day Michael stopped to help a stranger on the sidewalk, the Wilson Solidarity Projects had already assisted more than 2,000 needy families. The fleet of community ambulances grew to 15 vehicles, all coordinated by Michael. One Friday afternoon, while Michael was organizing the monthly reports at the project headquarters, Andrew approached him with a serious expression. Michael, I need to tell you something. What is it? I received a proposal to expand our work to other states. That's good news, isn't it? Yes, it is. But it means I'll need to travel a lot, and I want to leave you in charge of everything here in New York City. Michael was surprised. Andrew, I don't know if I'm capable of that. You are. In these months, you've proven that you understand people better than any trained administrator, but it's a lot of responsibility. And that's why I trust you. Andrew showed the project numbers. In 6 months, they had saved more than 500 lives through the free transportation, built 3 schools in needy neighborhoods, and given scholarships to 200 children. Michael, you turned an idea into reality. We did it, Andrew. It was a team effort. Yes, but you were the heart of it all. That evening, Michael had dinner with Andrew, Mrs. Margaret, Emily, Joseph, and Amanda. It was what he called a family dinner. Everyone, I want to make a toast, said Andrew, raising his glass. Why? Asked Amanda. Because a year ago I was a lost man with no memory living on the streets. Today I'm here, surrounded by the people I love, doing work that has meaning. And all because of a man who stopped to help a stranger, added Mrs. Margaret. Michael, "You didn't just change my life," said Andrew. "You changed the lives of thousands of people." "And my own life changed too," replied Michael. "A year ago I was just a driver. Today I'm part of something bigger." Emily smiled at her ex-husband. "Michael, I'm proud of you." "Thank you, Em. And thank you for coming back into my life through this project." Joseph raised his glass. A toast to Michael, the man who proved that small gestures can have big consequences. Everyone toasted, moved. After dinner, Michael and Andrew walked through the garden of Mrs. Margaret's house. "Andrew, can I ask you a question?" "Of course." "Do you regret finding out the truth about Blackwood?" "Never. I prefer a painful truth to a comfortable lie." "Even though you almost lost your life?" "Michael, I didn't almost lose my life. I almost lost the chance to truly live." "What do you mean?" "Before the accident, I was rich but not happy. I had a lot of money but little purpose. Now I have less money, but much more meaning in life." Michael understood what Andrew meant. "And you, Michael, if you could go back in time, would you stop to help that man on the sidewalk again?" Michael thought for a moment. "Without a doubt. Even knowing all the problems that came after." "Why?" "Because I learned that doing the right thing isn't a choice we make thinking about the consequences. It's a choice we make because it's who we are." Andrew smiled. "My mother used to say something I never forgot." "What did she say?" "That God puts good people in our path at the exact moments we need them. Do you think that's what happened?" "I'm sure of it. You appeared in my life at the exact moment I needed you most." "And you appeared in my life at the moment I needed a purpose most." The two fell silent for a moment, watching the stars. "Michael, there's something I haven't told you yet." "What?" "The money Blackwood stole. It wasn't just 15 million. Was it more?" "Much more. It was 42 million rays." Michael was shocked. "And did you manage to recover it all?" "Almost all of it. 38 million. What about the missing 4 million? Blackwood had already spent it. But do you know what this means?" "That you have a lot of money to invest in social projects." "Exactly. And I want to use that money to create something big, Michael." "What do you have in mind?" "A national foundation. Wilson Solidarity across the entire United States." "That's an incredible idea, Andrew, and I want you to be the executive director of this foundation." Michael was speechless. "Andrew, You're the right person for this, Michael. You have your heart in the right place and the necessary experience. But I've never run a national foundation, and I had never had amnesia on a sidewalk. Sometimes life prepares us for things we can't even imagine." Michael thought about the proposal. It was a unique opportunity to make a difference in the lives of thousands of people across the country. "Andrew, I accept, but on one condition." "What?" "That you remain as the foundation's president. I don't want to do this alone." "I accept the condition." The two embraced, sealing the partnership that would change the lives of thousands of people in the coming years. 1 year later, the Wilson Solidarity Foundation was already operating in 12 U.S. states. Michael traveled constantly, implementing solidarity transportation projects in various cities. On one of these trips, he was in New Orleans driving one of the foundation's ambulances when he received a call from Andrew. "Michael, where are you?" "In New Orleans. I just took a child to the hospital." "How is the implementation going there?" "Very well. People are very receptive to the project." "Michael, remember the day you saved me?" "How could I forget? Today marks exactly 2 years." Michael looked at the calendar on his phone. It was true. Wow, how time has flown, and how everything has changed. "Andrew, do you know how many people we've helped in these 2 years?" "How many?" "Over 15,000 people have received free transportation to hospitals. We built 23 schools. We gave scholarships to 1,200 children. And it all started with you stopping to help a man on the street. Actually, it all started with you having the courage to report Blackwood." "No, Michael. It all started with you having heart." When Michael hung up the phone, he looked out the ambulance window. Outside, life went on as usual, people coming and going, each with their own problems and joys. He thought about how many other stories like his and Andrew's were happening at that moment. How many people were making choices that would change entire lives. That night, staying in a simple hotel in New Orleans, Michael wrote in his personal diary, "Today marks 2 years since my life completely changed. I lost a job, but I gained a purpose. I lost security, but I gained the opportunity to make a difference. If I could go back in time and choose not to stop to help Andrew, I wouldn't do it. Because I learned that the best things in life happen when we step out of our comfort zone to help someone." Blackwood is in prison paying for the crimes he committed. Victoria too. Justice has been served. But the most important thing wasn't the punishment of the guilty. It was the redemption of the victims. Andrew regained not only his memory but the meaning of life. Joseph got out of a situation that was destroying him. Amanda can study in peace. Mrs. Margaret saw her brother's dream become a reality. And me, I discovered that being a driver wasn't my profession. It was just my job. My true profession is being a bridge between people who need help and people who can help. Tomorrow I catch a flight back to New York City. Andrew wants to talk about expanding the foundation to other countries in Latin America. Who would have thought that one day I'd be planning international social projects? Sometimes I think about Blackwood. Does he regret what he did? Does he understand how much good he could have done with all that money? But I don't hold a grudge. He made his choices and is paying for them. We made our choices and are being rewarded for them. Life is a series of choices. We can choose to look only at our own problems, or we can choose to see the needs of others. We can choose the easy path, or we can choose the right path. I chose to stop and help a stranger on a sidewalk. It was the best choice I ever made in my life. The next day, Michael returned to New York City. At the airport, he was greeted by Andrew, Mrs. Margaret, and the entire foundation team. "How was New Orleans?" asked Andrew. "Incredible, the project is already running perfectly." "And Miami? When are we starting there?" "Next month. I've already found local partners." Mrs. Margaret approached Michael. "Michael, I want to show you something." She handed him a letter. "What's this?" "A letter from a mother in Cleveland. Her son was saved by one of our ambulances." Michael read the letter and was moved. The woman thanked him for saving her son's life and said that Michael was an angel sent by God. "Mrs. Margaret, things like this remind me why we do this work. And they remind me of how important it was for you to stop and help my brother that day. You know, Mrs. Margaret, sometimes I think I wasn't the one who saved Andrew. He was the one who saved me." "How so?" "He gave me the chance to discover who I really am." "And who are you, Michael?" "Someone who believes that small gestures can change the world." A week later, Michael was driving a new ambulance through New York City when he saw a familiar scene. A man passed out on the sidewalk, people walking by without stopping to help. This time, he didn't hesitate for a second. He stopped the ambulance, got out, and ran to help the man. "Sir, can you hear me?" The man opened his eyes, confused. "What happened?" "You passed out. I'm going to take you to the hospital." "I don't have money to pay for an ambulance." "It's free, sir. It's part of a social project." Michael helped the man into the ambulance and took him to the nearest hospital. During the trip, the man said he had been unemployed for months and couldn't even afford his high blood pressure medication. "What's your name?" asked Michael. "Raymond. Raymond Adams." "Mr. Raymond, do you have family?" "I have a daughter, but she lives far away in Iowa." "Would you like to speak with her?" "I would, but I don't have a phone." Michael lent his cell phone to Raymond to call his daughter. The woman was desperate when she learned her father had fallen ill and promised to come to New York City the next day. At the hospital, Michael waited until Raymond was seen and his condition stabilized. "Mr. Raymond, do you have a place to stay tonight?" "No, Mr. Michael. I've been living on the streets for 2 months." Michael thought for a moment. "Mr. Raymond, I know a place where you can stay. It's a support house our foundation maintains. For free. For free. And tomorrow, when your daughter arrives, we can help you get reorganized." Robert began to cry. "Why are you doing this for me?" "Because someone once did it for me, Mr. Robert." Michael took Robert to the Foundation's support house and handed him over to the care of the social worker. "Take good care of him. His daughter arrives tomorrow. You can count on it, Michael." On his way back home, Michael called Andrew. "Andrew, something happened today." "What?" "I found another man passed out on the street, and you stopped to help." "Of course." Andrew laughed. "Michael, you're never going to change." "I don't want to change, Andrew. I want to keep being the person who stops to help. And that's why you're special." "I'm not special, Andrew. I just do what anyone should do. But not everyone does. Then our mission is to inspire more people to do it." "I agree. And do you know how we're going to do that?" "How?" "By telling our story, showing the world that small gestures can have big consequences." "That's a good idea. I've even thought of a title, The Driver Who Changed a Life and Had His Changed Too." Michael laughed. "That's a long title, Andrew." "But it's true." 2 years later, Michael was at the launch of the book that told his and Andrew's story. The event took place at a bookstore in downtown New York City, and there were hundreds of people interested in learning the story. "Michael, how do you feel seeing your story become a book?" asked a journalist. "I feel responsible for inspiring others to do good." "What is the main message of the book?" "That we all have the power to change lives. Sometimes it's just a matter of stopping and paying attention to what's happening around us." Andrew was also interviewed. "Mr. Andrew, what is it like knowing your life was saved by a stranger?" "Michael wasn't a stranger. He was an angel I hadn't met yet." "And today, how is your relationship with him?" "Michael is my best friend and my partner in social projects. He's like a brother to me." Mrs. Margaret, now 74 years old, also attended the launch. "Mrs. Margaret, did you imagine that day would change so many lives?" "When Michael stopped to help my brother, he didn't just save one life. He saved thousands of lives that are now benefiting from our projects." "What is the current impact of the projects?" "In 5 years, we've already served over 50,000 people. We have operations in all US states and have just started in Argentina and Chile." At the end of the event, a young woman approached Michael. "Mr. Michael, may I speak with you?" "Of course." "My name is Patricia. I was reading your book and felt inspired to start a social project in my city." "Which city?" "Pittsburgh. I want to create a free transportation project for the elderly." "That's an excellent idea, Patricia. Could you help me?" "Of course. Our foundation has a support program for new projects." Michael gave his card to Patricia, and they scheduled a meeting for the following week. "See that, Andrew?" Michael said later. "The story is multiplying." "That's what I always wanted, Michael, for our experience to inspire others. And it's working." That night, Michael returned home thinking about how his life had completely changed. He now lived in a bigger house in a better neighborhood, but hadn't lost his simplicity. In the living room, there was a photo frame with the picture from the day the Foundation's first ambulance was inaugurated. In it, Michael, Andrew, Mrs. Margaret, Emily, Joseph, and Amanda were smiling together. Next to it, another frame with a more recent photo. Michael receiving an honor from the New York City Mayor's office for services rendered to the community. But the photo Michael liked the most was on the nightstand in his bedroom. A picture of him with Raymond Adams and his daughter, on the day Raymond got a job through the Foundation's contacts. Raymond was my second Andrew, thought Michael, and probably not the last. The next day, Michael woke up early and went to the Foundation's office. He had a full schedule: a meeting with Patricia about the Pittsburgh project, a video conference with the team in Argentina, and reviewing the quarterly financial reports. Andrew arrived shortly after, bringing a newspaper. "Michael, look at this." It was a story about a rideshare driver in Chicago who had stopped to help a hit-and-run victim and discovered he was a businessman whose family had been searching for him for days. "Sound familiar?" asked Andrew, smiling. "Very familiar. I think our story is truly inspiring people." "How about we reach out to this driver?" "Good idea. Maybe he'd like to participate in one of our projects." Michael called the driver from Chicago and spoke with him for an hour. The man, named Roger, shared that he had read Michael's book and felt inspired to help people in need. Mr. Michael, could you come here to Chicago to see our project? I certainly can, Roger. In fact, I'm planning a trip through Michigan next month. It would be an honor to host you here. When he hung up, Michael turned to Andrew. You know what the best part of all this is? What? Seeing that what started with a simple gesture is spreading across the entire country. And around the world, I've already had inquiries from Costa Rica and Colombia interested in our projects. Andrew, sometimes I feel like we're living a dream. If it is a dream, may we never wake up. Michael laughed and got back to work. He had reports to review, projects to approve, people to attend to. At noon, he received an unexpected call. It was from his daughter, Samantha, who was now 20 and studying business administration at a college in Princeton. Dad, I saw the article about you in the paper today. Which article? About the foundation expanding to other countries. Oh, yes. How are you, honey? Good, Dad. And so proud of you. Thank you, Samantha. Dad, can I ask you a question? Of course. Do you regret stopping to help Mr. Andrew that day? Michael thought for a moment. Never, honey. It was the best decision I ever made in my life. Even though you lost your job. Especially because I lost my job. If I hadn't lost it, I would never have discovered my true calling. Dad, when I graduate, I want to work at the foundation with you. Michael was moved. That would be a gift, honey. I want to learn how to make a difference in people's lives like you do. You already make a difference just by being who you are, Samantha. After the conversation with his daughter, Michael went out to lunch with Andrew at a restaurant near the office. Andrew, Samantha wants to work at the foundation when she graduates. That's great. She'll be a wonderful addition to the team. She said she wants to learn how to make a difference in people's lives. Runs in the family. Or it's about example. I think kids learn more from what they see us do than from what they hear us say. True. And Samantha has always seen you helping people. During lunch, a well-dressed man in his 60s approached the restaurant. Excuse me, are you Michael Reynolds and Andrew Wilson? Yes, we are, Michael replied. My name is Edward Fisher. I'm a businessman here in New York City. Can we help you with something? Asked Andrew. Actually, I want to help you. I read about the foundation's work and would like to make a donation. Michael and Andrew exchanged surprised glances. What kind of donation, Mr. Edward? I'm willing to donate $2 million to your projects. Michael nearly choked on his food. $2 million? Yes. My company had a very good year, and I want to give back to society. Andrew quickly composed himself. Mr. Edward, we're very honored by your offer, but we'd like to understand your motivations better. Edward smiled. It's simple. My 8-year-old granddaughter was rescued by one of your ambulances last year. They saved her life. Michael remembered the case. The girl who had an asthma attack on the south side. Exactly. Isabella Fisher. I remember her. A very brave girl. Because of you, she is alive today. How can I not repay that? Andrew took Edward's hand. Mr. Edward, your donation will allow us to save hundreds of other children. That is exactly what I want. They scheduled a meeting for the following week to formalize the donation. When Edward left, Michael and Andrew were silent for a moment. Andrew, do you realize what just happened? What? The circle has closed. We saved a child. Her grandfather comes to us to help save other children. It's what I always say, Michael. Good attracts more good. And evil attracts more evil. That's why Blackwood ended up alone in prison. And we ended up here, surrounded by people who want to help. They returned to the office excited about the prospect of the donation. With an additional $2 million, they could expand the projects much more quickly. Michael, with this donation, we can accelerate the international expansion. And we can create new types of projects. How about free school transportation for underprivileged children? Great idea. And how about a project for veterinary ambulances for pets of low-income families? Brilliant, Andrew. Continuously expanding the concept of solidarity. They spent the afternoon planning new projects and discussing growth strategies. At night, Michael returned home tired but satisfied. Before sleeping, as he had done every night for 5 years, he wrote in his diary, Today marks 5.5 years since I stopped to help Andrew. Not a day goes by that I am not amazed by the developments of that decision. Today a businessman offered $2 million to the foundation because we saved his granddaughter's life. It's incredible how things connect. Sometimes I think about what my life would be like if I hadn't stopped that day. I would probably still be Blackwood's driver, unaware of the corruption, living a life without much purpose. Not that being a driver has no value. It has a lot of value. But for me, being a Solidarity ambulance driver makes much more sense than being a corrupt businessman's personal driver. Today, Samantha told me she wants to work at the foundation. It's the greatest pride I can have as a father, to see that my daughter wants to follow a path of helping others. Emily is also becoming more involved in the projects. Sometimes I think that, in an indirect way, Andrew helped us become a family again, not as husband and wife, but as partners in a greater mission. Joseph became one of our best employees. Amanda graduated and now works as a social worker in one of our projects. Mrs. Margaret remains active at 74. And Andrew became my best friend. It's as if we were brothers, separated at birth, and fate reunited us on that Broadway sidewalk. Tomorrow I'm going to Chicago to see Roger's project. Next week, meeting with Edward Fisher to formalize the donation. Next month, trip to Argentina to inaugurate our first international unit. Who would have thought that a fired driver would become the executive director of an international foundation? But do you know what the best part of all this is? It's that it's not over yet. Every day there are new opportunities to help, new people to meet, new projects to develop. I learned that life is not about what we get for ourselves. It's about what we manage to give to others. And the more we give, the more we get back. Blackwood learned that the hard way. He wanted to take for himself what belonged to others and lost everything. We decided to give to others what was ours and gained everything. Not everything in material terms, obviously, but everything in terms of meaning, purpose, personal fulfillment. If I died tomorrow, I would die knowing I made a difference in the world, that I left the world a little better than I found it, and that to me is the definition of a life well lived. The next morning, Michael caught a flight to Chicago. Roger was waiting for him at the airport with a sign. "Welcome, Michael Reynolds, our hero." "Roger, what kind of exaggeration is this?" said Michael, laughing. "No exaggeration at all, Mr. Reynolds. You are a hero to many people. I'm just a person who did what I thought was right. And you inspired many other people to do the same." During the ride from the airport to downtown Chicago, Roger told him about the project he had created, inspired by Michael's story. "Mr. Reynolds, in 6 months, we've already helped 200 people here in CHI. "What kind of help?" "Transportation to hospitals, for medical appointments, for tests, all free." "How many ambulances do you have?" 3. "But we want to reach 10 by the end of the year." "How do you get funding?" "Donations from local business owners, raffles, charity events. The community has embraced the cause." Michael was impressed with the organization of Roger's project. It was well structured and already had concrete results. "Roger, would you like to officially join the Wilson Solidarity Foundation?" "We would very much like to, Mr. Reynolds. Then let's formalize a partnership. You'll maintain local autonomy, but with institutional and financial support from the National Foundation." It would be a dream come true. They spent the day visiting the project's facilities in Chicago. Michael met the team of volunteers, the ambulances, the patients who had been helped. One of the stories that struck him the most was that of Mrs. Constance, an 80-year-old lady who had been rescued by Roger during a heart attack. "Mr. Reynolds, if it weren't for Roger, I would have died that day." "Do you have family, Mrs. Constance?" "I have a daughter, but she lives far away. Roger has become like a son to me." "And how did you hear about his project?" "I saw the news story about you and Mr. Andrew on television. I was moved by the story. When I found out there was a similar project here in CHE, I was very happy." Michael talked with Mrs. Constance for an hour. She told him about her life, her difficulties, her gratitude for the project. "Mrs. Constance, do you know you inspire other people with your strength?" "Me, Mr. Reynolds?" "Yes." Seeing an 80-year-old person so optimistic and grateful teaches us a lot about life. I've learned that while there's life, there's hope. And projects like yours give us a lot of hope. In the evening, Roger hosted a dinner for Michael with the entire project team. There were 15 volunteers, mostly young college students. "Mr. Reynolds, can you tell us about the day you met Mr. Andrew?" asked one of the volunteers. Michael told the whole story, from the moment he saw Andrew passed out on the sidewalk to the founding of the international organization. "And you never regretted stopping?" asked another volunteer. "Never, not even in the most difficult moments." What advice would you give to someone who wants to start a social project? Start small, but start. Don't wait for ideal conditions. Do what you can with what you have today. And how to deal with the difficulties. Remember that every person you help is a life transformed. That makes any difficulty worthwhile. One of the volunteers, named Fiona, approached Michael at the end of the evening. "Mr. Reynolds, can I tell you something?" "Of course, Fiona." "I was going through depression a few months ago. I couldn't see any meaning in life. I even thought about doing something foolish." Michael paid close attention. "And what happened?" "I read your book. Your story made me realize that sometimes the meaning of life is in helping other people." "And how are you now?" "Much better. Working on the project has given me purpose. It made me realize I can make a difference." Michael was moved. "Fiona, you made a difference in my life too." "How so?" "You showed me our story can save lives in ways we never imagined." On the flight back to New York City the next day, Michael reflected on the trip. It had been even more productive than he expected. Not only had they closed the partnership with the Chicago project, but he had met incredible people who were multiplying the work. When he arrived in New York City, he went straight to the Foundation's office. Andrew was waiting eagerly. "How was Chicago?" "Incredible, Andrew. It'll be our first official branch." "And Roger?" "An exceptional guy. You'll really like him." Michael shared every detail of the trip. Andrew was especially interested in Fiona's story. "Michael, do you realize our story doesn't just save lives physically but emotionally too?" "I realize that today. It's an even greater responsibility. And an even greater motivation too." "True." Andrew showed some news he had received during Michael's absence. "Michael, we've received proposals from inland cities to implement similar projects." "How many proposals?" 15 cities: Cleveland, Princeton, Pittsburgh, Long Beach, Ann Arbor. That's a lot to handle at once. That's why I'm thinking of creating a social franchise program. How would it work? Cities implement the projects with local autonomy, but following our protocols and receiving our technical and financial support. It's a brilliant idea, Andrew. And you would be the national coordinator of the program. Michael liked the idea. It was a way to grow quickly without losing quality. When can we start? Next week. I've already scheduled meetings with representatives from 5 cities. Michael spent the rest of the afternoon organizing his schedule for the coming weeks. There was a lot to do, but he was excited about the possibilities. That evening he had dinner with Emily and Samantha, who had come from Princeton to visit him. "Dad, how was Chicago?" asked Samantha. "Very good, honey. I met incredible people doing beautiful work." "Dad, when I finish college, I want to do a social project in Princeton too." "What kind of project?" "Free transportation for underprivileged students. Often they miss classes because they don't have money for fare." Emily smiled. "Samantha, that really runs in the family." "How so, Mom?" "This desire to help others. Your father has always been like that." "And you too, Em," said Michael. "Otherwise you wouldn't have become a nurse." "That's true. We chose helping professions indeed. And now Samantha is going to follow the same path." Samantha became thoughtful. "Dad, do you think people are born with this desire to help, or do they learn it?" Michael thought about the question. "I think everyone is born with the capacity to feel compassion, but some develop this capacity more than others. And what makes the difference? Life experiences, education, examples we see, and choices we make. Do you think Mr. Blackwood was also born with the capacity to feel compassion?" "I think so, but he chose to follow other paths." And do you think he can still change? Michael thought about the question. Blackwood had been in prison for almost 5 years. I hope so, Samantha. I hope he uses his time in prison to reflect and change. Dad, have you ever thought about visiting him? The question took Michael by surprise. Visit Blackwood? Yes, to talk with him. Show him you don't hold a grudge. Michael had never thought about that. I don't know if that would be a good idea, honey. Why not? Because I don't know how he would react, and I don't know if it would be good for him or for me. Emily joined the conversation. Michael, maybe a visit from you would do him good. Show him that it's possible to forgive. Do you really think I should visit him? I think it would be a beautiful gesture, said Samantha. But only if you feel comfortable with it, added Emily. Michael Reynolds thought about the suggestion for the rest of the evening. Would he be able to forgive Blackwood? Would he be able to look into the eyes of the man who tried to destroy Andrew and say he held no grudge? The next day, he talked about it with Andrew. Andrew, Samantha suggested that I visit Blackwood in prison. Andrew was surprised. Why? To show him that I forgive him. And do you forgive? Michael thought for a moment. I think so. Hatred doesn't lead me anywhere. Michael, if you feel ready for this, I support you. It might even be good for him to see that his actions didn't destroy you. On the contrary, his actions led me to discover my calling. Exactly. Maybe that's what he needs to hear. Michael decided he would make the visit. He contacted the prison administration and scheduled a visit for the following week. The prison was in a signing, an hour from New York City. Michael made the trip thinking about what he would say to Blackwood. When he arrived at the prison, he went through security procedures and was taken to the visiting room. Blackwood arrived a few minutes later. The man who had been his boss looked very different. Thinner, graying hair, a worn-out appearance. When he saw Michael, he was visibly surprised. Michael, what are you doing here? I came to talk to you, Blackwood. Why? Did you come to humiliate me? I came to tell you that I forgive you. Blackwood remained silent for a long time. You forgive me? I do, and I also came to thank you. Thank me? Why? Because firing me was the best thing you ever did for me. Michael told Blackwood about everything that had happened in the last 5 years, the foundation, the social projects, the lives saved. Michael, are you saying that my evil ended up resulting in something good? I'm saying that God can turn any bad situation into something good, if we allow it. Blackwood began to cry. Michael, I ruined my life. I lost everything to greed. But you still have time to rebuild, Blackwood. How? I'm a convict. No one will ever trust me again. I trust you. I believe you can change. Really? Really. And when you get out of prison, if you want, there's a place for you in our foundation. Blackwood was shocked. You're offering me a job. I'm offering you a chance to start over, to use your business experience for good. Michael, why are you doing this? Because I believe in the power of redemption, and because I know that deep down you have a good heart. The visit lasted 2 hours. Blackwood talked about his life in prison, his regrets, his fears about the future. Michael listened to him with patience and compassion. Blackwood, want some advice? I do. Use this time in prison to prepare for a new life when you get out. Study, reflect, plan how you can contribute positively to society. Do you think people will forgive me? I think if you show real change, yes. And Andrew? Would he forgive me? Ask him. But I think so. When Michael left the prison, he felt at peace. He had done what he thought was right and planted a seed of hope in Blackwood's heart. On the way back to New York City, he called Andrew. How was the visit? Better than expected. Blackwood is remorseful and wants to change. And you offered him a job? I did. Does it bother you? No. I admire your ability to forgive, Michael. And you? Could you forgive him? I think so. Holding a grudge only hurts us. 3 months later, Michael received a letter from Blackwood. He said he had started studying NGO management in prison and wanted to specialize in social projects. Michael, your visit changed my life. No one had ever offered me a second chance after all I did. I'm determined to earn your trust. When I get out of here, I want to dedicate my life to repairing the damage I've caused." Michael showed the letter to Andrew. "It seems your visit really made a difference." "I hope so. Everyone deserves a second chance. Even Blackwood. Especially Blackwood. He needs it more than anyone." 1 year later, Blackwood was transferred to a semi-open regime and began working days at a recycling company. In his free time, he wrote letters to Michael about his progress. 5.5 years after imprisonment, Blackwood was released. Michael and Andrew waited for him at the prison gate. "Michael, Andrew, you came to get me." "We did," said Michael. "Welcome to your new life," Blackwood cried as he hugged the 2 men he had tried to destroy and who now welcomed him as a friend. "Are you ready to help me start over?" "We are," said Andrew, "but on the condition that you fully dedicate yourself to the social projects. That's all I want to do for the rest of my life." Blackwood started working at the foundation as a financial consultant, helping optimize resources and create new projects. His business experience, now directed toward good, was crucial for the organization's growth. 2 years after leaving prison, Blackwood created his own project, a social reintegration program for former inmates. The project helped people leaving prison find work and rebuild their lives. "Michael, I want to name you as honorary president of my project." "Why?" "Because you're the one who taught me it's never too late to start over." Michael accepted the honor, moved. Seeing Blackwood transformed into a person dedicated to social good was proof that everyone can truly change. Blackwood's reintegration program was so successful that it caught the attention of government authorities. Within months, the project was adopted as a model in several prisons in New York State. "Blackwood, you're becoming a national reference in social reintegration," said Andrew at a foundation meeting. "It's ironic, isn't it? 10 years ago, I was destroying lives. Today, I'm helping rebuild them." "It's proof that people can evolve," Michael replied. Meanwhile, the Wilson Solidarity Foundation had become one of the largest social organizations in the United States. It operated in every state, had partnerships in 8 Latin American countries, and had already helped over 200,000 people. Michael, now 50 years old, was nationally recognized as one of the country's leading social leaders. He had received dozens of awards and honors, but remained as humble as ever. One Monday morning, Michael was at the Foundation's office when he received a call that would change his life again. "Mr. Michael Reynolds." "Yes, who's speaking?" "This is the office of the President of the United States. The President would like to speak with you." Michael thought it was a prank. "I'm sorry?" "The President wants to schedule a meeting with you to discuss national social assistance policies." "Are you serious?" "Completely serious, Mr. Reynolds. The President has read about your work and wants to meet you in person." Michael scheduled the meeting for the following week. When he told Andrew, they were both thrilled. "Michael, you're going to meet the President of the United States." "I still can't believe it, Andrew. And do you know what this means?" "What?" "That our work could go national. Imagine if we get federal government support." Michael flew to Washington, D.C. on a Thursday. He was received at the White House with full honors. The President, a 60-year-old man known for valuing social projects, welcomed him in the Oval Office. "Mr. Reynolds, it's an honor to meet you in person." "The honor is mine, Mr. President. I've read about your journey. It's inspiring. A driver who saved a man on the street and ended up creating one of the largest social foundations in the country. Mr. President, it was the work of many people. I was just lucky to be in the right place at the right time." "Modesty is a rare quality these days, Mr. Reynolds, but I want to talk about something bigger." "I'm listening." "We want to create a national solidarity transportation program based on your model." Michael was speechless. "A national program?" "Yes. Community ambulances in every U.S. municipality, free school transportation, transportation for medical appointments, all coordinated nationally. That would be incredible, Mr. President. And we want you to coordinate everything." As National Secretary of Solidarity Transportation, Michael nearly fainted. "National Secretary? With ministerial status, a budget of $2 billion per year, a team of 1,000 employees." Mr. President, I don't know if I'm prepared for something like this. Mr. Reynolds, you turned $5,000 a month into an international foundation. You have all the necessary preparation. Michael asked for time to think. It was a unique opportunity to multiply the impact of the work on a national scale, but also an enormous responsibility. Mr. President, can I give you an answer next week? Of course, but I hope it's positive. On the flight back to New York City, Michael called Andrew. Andrew, you won't believe what happened. Tell me. Michael recounted the entire conversation with the president. Michael, you have to accept. But what about the foundation and our projects? The foundation continues. But imagine what you can do with $2 billion a year. It's a huge responsibility, Andrew. And that's why you're the right person. Because you understand the responsibility. Michael spent the weekend talking with Emily, Samantha, Mrs. Margaret, and the entire foundation team. Everyone encouraged him to accept. Dad, it's the chance to transform the entire United States, said Samantha. Michael, you were born for this, said Emily. Little brother, you can take our story to the whole country, said Mrs. Margaret, who now treated Michael like a second brother. On Monday, Michael called Washington, D.C. Mr. President, I accept the position. Excellent. When can you start? I need a month to organize the transition at the foundation. Perfect. I'll announce your appointment tomorrow. The next day, Michael's appointment as National Secretary of Solidarity Transportation was on the front page of every newspaper in the country. From fired driver to National Secretary, one headline read. Andrew took over as Executive President of the Wilson Solidarity Foundation, while Michael prepared for the new challenge. On Inauguration Day in Washington, D.C., the entire family was present. Andrew, Mrs. Margaret, Emily, Samantha, Joseph, Amanda, Blackwood, and dozens of people who had been helped by the projects over the years. Today, I take on this position with the responsibility of bringing to all of the United States what started on a sidewalk on Broadway, Michael said in his inauguration speech. I want every American who needs transportation to a hospital, to school, to work, to know that they will have that right guaranteed. And I want every driver, every nurse, every volunteer who works in this program to know they are participating in something greater, building a more compassionate country. The national program was implemented in record time. Within 2 years, every U.S. municipality had at least one community ambulance. Major cities had complete fleets of solidarity transportation. The results were impressive. A 40% reduction in infant mortality due to lack of transportation to hospitals, a 30% increase in school attendance in underserved communities, and savings of billions of dollars for the public health system. Michael traveled constantly across the country, inaugurating new projects and monitoring the results. In every city he visited, he found stories similar to his and Andrew's, people who had turned small gestures into big changes. On one of these trips in Miami, he met Mary Grace, a nurse who had created a project of river ambulances to serve riverine communities in the Everglades. Mr. Reynolds, I read your story and was inspired. Here in the northern part, many people die because they can't get to the hospital in time. And how does your project work, Mary? We have 10 ambulance boats that navigate the rivers, bringing medical care to isolated communities. How many people have you served so far? Over 5,000 people in 2 years. Michael was moved by Mary's story. Mary, how about integrating your project into the national program? Would that be possible? Of course. We'll create a specific division for river transportation. In 3 years as National Secretary, Michael had turned the Solidarity Transportation Program into a global reference. Delegations from various countries came to the United States to study the model. One Friday morning, Michael was in his office in Washington, D.C., when he received a call from Andrew. Michael, remember the day you saved me? How could I forget? Today marks exactly 10 years. Michael looked at the calendar. It was true. 10 years, Andrew. How time has flown, and how everything has changed. Michael, do you know how many lives were saved because of that day? Many, I hope. Over 1 million people, Michael. 1 million people who received free transportation to hospitals, schools, medical appointments. Michael was moved by the number. 1 million lives, Andrew. And it all started with you stopping to help a stranger. Actually, it all started with you having the courage to investigate corruption. No, Michael. It all started with you having the heart to see others suffering. That night, Michael returned to New York City to celebrate the 10 years with the whole family. They organized a party at the headquarters of the Wilson Solidarity Foundation. All the people who had been part of the journey were present. Andrew, Mrs. Margaret, Emily, Samantha, Joseph, Amanda, Blackwood, Dr. Robert, Emily, hundreds of employees and volunteers. "Everyone, I want to make a speech," said Michael, moved. 10 years ago, I was an unemployed driver with no prospects, no purpose. Today, I am the National Secretary of Solidarity Transportation, responsible for a program that benefits millions of Americans. But that's not what makes me most proud. What makes me most proud is being here surrounded by people who have become my family. Andrew, you taught me that courage is doing the right thing even when it's dangerous. Mrs. Margaret, you taught me that family love goes beyond blood ties. Emily, you taught me that sometimes we lose people only to find them again in an even more special way. Samantha, you taught me that our children can be our greatest teachers. Joseph, you taught me that it's never too late to do the right thing. Amanda, you taught me that courage is hereditary. Blackwood, you taught me that redemption is possible for anyone. And all of you taught me that life isn't about what we achieve for ourselves, but about what we manage to give to others. The party lasted until dawn. People shared stories, recalled memorable moments, planned new projects. At the end of the night, Michael and Andrew were alone at the Foundation's headquarters. Michael, do you have any idea of the impact you've had on the world? Andrew, we have. It was teamwork. But you were the catalyst for everything. And you were the inspiration for everything. Michael, can I ask you a question? Sure. If you could go back in time and choose not to stop to help me that day, would you make that choice? Michael thought for a long time. Andrew, if I had just passed you by on that sidewalk, today I'd just be another anonymous driver in a big city. I wouldn't have met you, wouldn't have discovered my calling, wouldn't have helped 1 million people. I wouldn't have become National Secretary, wouldn't have this family we've built. I wouldn't have learned that true wealth isn't in what we have, but in what we're able to give. So no, Andrew, not for 1 second would I change that decision. Even knowing all the problems that came after, especially because of the problems that came after, they made me grow, evolve, discover strengths I didn't even know I had. Andrew smiled. You know what the best part of this whole story is, Michael? What? It's that it's not over yet. What do you mean? 10 years from now, we'll be here celebrating 20 years and telling about the next 1 million lives we've saved. You think so? I'm sure, because what we plant today, we harvest tomorrow. And what are we planting? Seeds of solidarity, examples of compassion, stories of hope. Michael looked around the Foundation headquarters. On the walls were hundreds of photos of people who had been helped by the projects. Smiling children, grateful elderly people, families rebuilt. Andrew, you know what my biggest dream is? What? That our story inspires other people to do the same. That every American who hears our story thinks, I can make a difference too. That dream is already coming true, Michael. Every week we get reports from people who created projects inspired by our story. That's true, but I want this to multiply even more. And it will multiply, because goodness is contagious. 2 years later, Michael received an unexpected invitation. The United Nations wanted him to present the American model of solidarity transportation to other countries. Andrew, I'm going to present our work at the UN. Michael, you're taking the story of the United States to the world. Our story, Andrew, our story. The presentation at the UN was a success. Delegates from more than 50 countries showed interest in implementing similar programs in their countries. Mr. Michael, said the representative from Sweden, how did you manage to create such an efficient program starting from scratch? Actually, we didn't start from scratch, Michael replied. We started from something very simple, the desire to help. And how did you convince the government to invest so many resources in the program? We showed results. We started small, proved it worked, and then the growth came naturally. What's the secret to the program's success? There's no secret. There's dedication, transparency, and love for one's neighbor. After the presentation, several countries requested consulting to implement their own solidarity transportation programs. Michael became an international consultant, traveling around the world to share the American experience. In 5 years, more than 30 countries had implemented programs inspired by the American model. Michael was internationally recognized as one of the leading experts in social innovation, but what made him proudest wasn't the awards or international recognition. It was knowing that anywhere in the world, people were being helped because of a decision he'd made on a sidewalk in New York City. On a trip to Costa Rica, he met Peter Martin, a taxi driver who had created a free transportation service for needy people in San Jose. Mr. Michael, I read your story in a newspaper and thought, if an American driver managed to change so many lives, I can do something too. And how many people have you helped, Peter? In 2 years, more than 1,000 people. Elderly people who need to go to the doctor, children who need to go to school, sick people who need to go to the hospital. How do you sustain the project? With donations from the community. And some fellow taxi drivers also joined. We're already 15 drivers in the project. Michael was moved by Peter's story. Peter, do you want to know something? I do. Your story inspires me as much as mine may have inspired you. How so? Because it shows me that what we did in the United States can be done anywhere. It just depends on people like you having the courage to start. Mr. Reynolds, can I ask you a personal question? Of course. Are you happy? Michael thought about the question. Peter, I don't know if there's an exact definition of happiness, but I can tell you that I feel fulfilled. What's the difference? Happiness can be fleeting. Fulfillment is lasting, and I feel fulfilled because I know my life has purpose. And what is that purpose? To make a difference. To leave the world a little better than I found it. And do you think you've succeeded? I think I'm succeeding, but there's still a lot of work ahead. Back in the United States, Michael talked to Andrew about the conversation with Peter. Andrew, do you see how our story keeps spreading? I do, and it moves me with each new account. Sometimes I think we're just instruments of something greater. How so? As if there were a higher force orchestrating everything, putting the right people in the right places at the right times. Do you think that's what happened to us? I'm sure of it. It wasn't a coincidence that you fainted right in front of the car I was driving. And it wasn't a coincidence that I chose to investigate Blackwood right at that time. And it wasn't a coincidence that Blackwood fired me the very next day. It's as if everything were part of a bigger plan. Michael reflected on that. Andrew, regardless of whether there's a bigger plan or not, the important thing is that we made the right choices. Exactly. And we continue to do so. At 55, Michael decided to write a second book about the 10 years following the first one. 10 years later, How a Gesture Became a Movement was released in 20 countries and became a global reference in social innovation. At the book launch in New York City, Michael was asked by a journalist, Mr. Reynolds, what has changed in your life perspective over these 10 years? I learned that our small gestures can have much bigger consequences than we imagine. And what is your message for those who want to make a difference in the world? Start where you are with what you have, helping those near you. The rest comes naturally. Do you have any regrets on this journey? None. Every difficulty was an opportunity for growth. And what are your plans for the future? To continue doing what I've always done, helping people. The difference is that now I can do it on a global scale. After the book launch, Michael received thousands of messages from people all over the world, telling how they had been inspired by the story. One of the messages that struck him the most was from a young woman from Japan. Mr. Reynolds, my name is Yuki Tanaka. I'm 22 years old and live in Tokyo. I read your book and decided to create a project to help lonely elderly people here in Japan. We've already formed a network of 200 volunteers who visits seniors living alone. Your story taught me that we don't need to wait for perfect conditions to start helping. Thank you for inspiring me. Michael personally replied to Yuki and dozens of others who had contacted him. Andrew, did you see the message from the Japanese woman? I did. It's amazing how our story reached Japan. And not just in Japan. I've received messages from Australia, France, India, Mexico. Our story has become universal, Michael, because the impulse to help is universal. It doesn't matter the country, the culture, the religion. Every human being has the capacity to feel compassion. And every human being has the capacity to make a difference. Exactly. 15 years after the encounter on the sidewalk, Michael was invited to give a lecture at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. The theme was, How Social Leaders Can Inspire Global Change. Ladies and gentlemen, Michael said to an audience of world leaders, I'm here today not as an expert in economics or politics, but as someone who learned a simple lesson. Small gestures can change the world. 15 years ago, I was an ordinary driver in a big city. Today, I coordinate social programs that benefit millions of people in dozens of countries. The difference wasn't a special degree, a family inheritance, or a unique opportunity. The difference was a choice to stop and help someone in need. How many opportunities to make a difference pass by us every day without us noticing? How many people could we help if we simply paid attention to what happens around us? My story isn't special because I'm special. My story is special because any one of you could have experienced something similar. The question isn't whether we have the ability to make a difference. The question is whether we have the will to make a difference. The lecture was a success, and Michael received proposals to participate in social programs in several countries. Back in the United States, he found Andrew excited about new projects. Michael, we have proposals to expand our work to Africa. Africa. Yes, Haiti, Rwanda, and Jamaica want to implement solidarity transportation programs. It's an incredible opportunity to take our experience to other continents. And would you agree to coordinate this expansion? Of course, Andrew, but not alone. I want you to come with me. Really, really. It's about time you got to know other countries too. The first trip to Africa was thrilling for both of them. In Haiti, they met impoverished communities that had huge difficulties accessing hospitals and schools due to a lack of transportation. Mr. Michael, said Mary Johnson, a Haitian nurse, here in the countryside, many children die because we can't get them to the hospital in time. And what's the main difficulty? Huge distances and a lack of vehicles. Sometimes we carry sick people for miles on foot. Michael and Andrew were moved by the stories they heard. Andrew, we have to do something urgently here. I agree. How about we start with a pilot project in 3 cities? Good idea. And we can train local drivers to coordinate the projects. The pilot project in Haiti was a success. In 6 months, they reduced infant mortality due to lack of medical transportation by 60% in the 3 chosen cities. Michael, the results here are even better than in the United States. It's because the need is greater, Andrew. When the need is urgent, the impact is more visible. And now, do we expand to other cities? Let's expand to other countries too. Rwanda, Jamaica, and then who knows, all of Africa. In 2 years, the Solidarity Transportation Program was operating in 15 African countries. Michael had become a global reference in social innovation applied to developing countries. One Sunday morning, Michael was at home resting when he received an unexpected call. Mr. Michael Reynolds? Yes, who's speaking? This is from the Nobel Peace Prize Committee. We would like to inform you that you have been nominated for this year's prize. Michael thought it was a prank. What did you say? You have been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize for your work in social innovation and solidarity transportation. Are you serious? Completely serious, Mr. Michael. The ceremony will be in Oslo in December. Michael hung up the phone stunned. He immediately called Andrew. Andrew, you won't believe this. What is it now? I've been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. Michael, you were nominated for the Nobel. That's what they said. Dude, you could win the Nobel Prize. Andrew, if I win, I want to share it with you. With me? With you, with Mrs. Margaret, with our whole team. This award wouldn't be mine. It would be ours. The news of the Nobel nomination spread quickly. Michael was on the cover of international magazines and received hundreds of congratulatory messages. Blackwood, who now coordinated 5 social reintegration projects in New York City, was one of the first to call. "Michael, congratulations on the Nobel nomination." "Thank you, Blackwood. You deserve it, man. You transformed the lives of millions of people." "We transformed them, Blackwood. You are part of this story too." "Michael, can I tell you something?" "Of course." "You saved me in ways you can't imagine. Not only did you give me a second chance, but you taught me that it's possible to be happy by helping others. And you taught me that redemption is real, that anyone can change. Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for not giving up on yourself." In December, Michael traveled to Oslo accompanied by Andrew, Mrs. Margaret, now 82 but still active, Emily, Samantha, who had graduated and was working at the foundation, Joseph, Amanda, and Blackwood. The Nobel ceremony was moving. Michael didn't win the main prize, but he received an honorable mention for the extraordinary services rendered to humanity through social innovation. "Ladies and gentlemen," Michael said in his ceremony speech, "I accept this honor not in my name, but in the name of all the drivers, nurses, volunteers, and beneficiaries who made our work possible. 20 years ago, I was just a driver who stopped to help a man on the street. Today I am here representing a global movement of solidarity. This proves that anyone, anywhere can start a revolution of kindness. We don't need to wait for governments, for organizations, for perfect conditions. We can start today, where we are, with what we have. My message to the world is simple. Look around, see who needs help, and help. The rest will happen naturally. Because when we plant seeds of kindness, we harvest gardens of hope." The ceremony was broadcast live to over 100 countries. Millions of people watched Michael's speech. In the following weeks, the foundation received thousands of contacts from people wanting to create similar projects in their cities and countries. "Andrew, it seems the Nobel multiplied our global visibility. And our responsibility too." "How so?" "Now the whole world is watching us. We have to meet expectations." "You're right, but we also have a unique opportunity to spread our message." "Exactly. How about we create a worldwide network of solidarity projects?" "Good idea. Connect all the projects inspired by our story into one big global network." The Global Solidarity Transportation Network was created the following year. Within a few months, over 100 projects from 50 countries had connected, sharing experiences and resources. Michael traveled constantly to coordinate the network, but he always returned to New York City, where he kept his office and his home. On one of these trips to Canada, he met Sarah Mitchell, a doctor who had created an ambulance project for remote indigenous communities. "Mr. Michael, your book changed my life. I worked at a hospital in Toronto, earned well, had a comfortable life. But when I read your story, I realized I wanted to do something more meaningful." "And how did the idea for the project with indigenous communities come about?" "I took a tourist trip to northern Canada and saw the difficulties these communities face in accessing medical care. I decided to leave my hospital job and dedicate myself to this." "And how is the project today?" "We serve 15 remote communities. We've already saved hundreds of lives." "Sarah, your story inspires me as much as mine might have inspired you." "How so?" "Because it shows me that our message is reaching where it needs to reach, in the hearts of people willing to sacrifice personal comfort for the common good." Michael returned from that trip, even more convinced he was on the right path. At 60 years old, he decided to write a third book, 20 years later, How a Movement Went Global. The book was launched simultaneously in 30 countries and became a worldwide bestseller. At the launch in New York City, the whole family was present. Now it also included Samantha's children. Michael had become a grandfather, Mrs. Margaret's grandchildren, and dozens of people who had joined the movement over the years. "Everyone," Michael said at the launch, "this book tells our collective story. It's no longer the story of a driver who helped a man on the street. It's the story of millions of people who decided to make a difference in the world. And the story continues to be written every day, in every ambulance that rescues someone, in every child who arrives at school, in every elderly person who receives a visit." Thank you to everyone who made this possible. Andrew stood up to speak. Michael, 20 years ago you physically saved me on a sidewalk. Today I can say you've saved the lives of millions of people around the world. But more than that, you proved that one man can change the world when that man has the courage to do what's right. Thank you for stopping that day. Thank you for changing my life, and thank you for changing the world. The event ended with everyone present observing a minute of silence in honor of the lives that had been saved over the 20 years. That night, Michael and Andrew walked along Broadway, passing the exact spot where everything had begun. Andrew, sometimes I come here and think about how our lives have changed, and how different it could have been if you had driven right by. Do you regret anything in these 20 years? Nothing, Michael. Absolutely nothing. Not even the difficult moments? Especially the difficult moments. They made us grow. And you, do you regret anything? Michael thought for a moment. I regret just one thing. What? Not having stopped to help more people before you. Andrew laughed. Michael, you've spent your whole life stopping to help people after me. That's true, but imagine if I had started earlier. Maybe you weren't ready earlier. Maybe everything happened at the right time. You're right. They stopped in front of the exact spot where Andrew had collapsed 20 years earlier. Now there was a commemorative plaque. At this location, on date, a global solidarity movement began. Michael Reynolds stopped to help Andrew Wilson, generating a chain of kindness that transformed millions of lives. Andrew, who would have thought there'd be a plaque here? And who would have thought our story would be known worldwide? Sometimes I still can't believe all this happened. It happened because you two made it happen, said a voice behind them. They turned and saw Mrs. Margaret, who had arrived by taxi. Mrs. Margaret, what are you doing here? I came to give thanks. At this location, Michael saved my brother, and my brother saved millions of other people. You didn't need to come here, Mrs. Margaret. Yes, I did. At 82 years old, I may not have many more opportunities to come here. The three stood in silence for a few minutes, each lost in their own reflections. Mrs. Margaret, Michael said, do you have any regrets in these 20 years? Yes, I do. What? Not thanking you every day for saving my brother. You don't need to thank me, Mrs. Margaret. Yes, I do. And I want to take this opportunity to say something I've never said. What? You two are the sons I never had. This family we've built is the greatest gift life has given me. The three of them embraced, moved. Mrs. Margaret, said Andrew, you are our family too. None of this would be possible without your strength and support. And without your wisdom and experience, added Michael. They returned home together, planning the next projects and celebrating another year of joint work. 5 years later, at 65, Michael decided to retire from his position as National Secretary to dedicate himself exclusively to coordinating the global network of solidarity projects. Andrew, the time has come to pass the baton to a new generation. Are you sure? I am. 25 years coordinating social projects. It's time for others to take the lead. And who do you suggest for your place? Samantha. She has the experience, dedication, and vision required. That's an excellent choice. Samantha's inauguration as National Secretary of Solidarity Transportation was an emotional moment for Michael. Seeing his daughter take on a role he had created was the fulfillment of a dream. Father, said Samantha in her inauguration speech, I take on this position with the responsibility of continuing the work you started 25 years ago. But I also take it on with the determination to take this work even further. Our generation has access to technologies you couldn't even dream of having. We will use this technology to optimize solidarity transportation and serve even more people. Thank you for creating this path. Now it's our turn to walk it. Michael was moved by his daughter's speech. Samantha inherited the best of you and Emily, said Andrew, and she also inherited 25 years of experience accumulated by our team. She will do an amazing job. Michael spent the following years traveling the world as a consultant and speaker, but always returning to New York City to be close to his family and follow the projects. On one of these trips to New Zealand, he met Robert Thompson, a retired businessman who had created an air ambulance project for rural regions. "Mr. Michael, I've read all your books. They were essential for me to understand that wealth without purpose is empty." "How so, Robert?" "I spent 40 years accumulating money, thinking it would make me happy. When I retired, I realized I had a lot of money but little meaning in life." "And how did you discover our work?" "My granddaughter gave me your first book as a Christmas present. She said she thought I needed to read it." "And how did you feel when you read it?" "Ashamed. Ashamed of having spent my entire life focused on making money and not on helping people." "But you overcame that shame and created something incredible." "Yes, and now I feel useful for the first time in decades." Michael was touched by Robert's story. "Robert, do you want to know something?" "I do. Stories like yours convince me that our work was worth it." "How so?" "Because it's not just about saving lives through transportation. It's about awakening in people like you the desire to make a difference." "Mr. Michael, may I ask a personal question?" "Of course." "Are you happy?" It was the same question Peter had asked in Costa Rica years before. "Robert, at 70, I can say I've lived a full life. I made a difference in the world, raised a beautiful family, inspired people to do good. I can't ask for more from one life." "And what is your greatest pride?" "Knowing that when I die, the work will continue, that you plant seeds that will grow for generations." "And what is your greatest dream for the future?" "That every person in the world understands they have the power to make a difference, that no one feels too small or too insignificant to help others." Back in the United States, Michael found the team excited about new projects. "Michael," said Samantha, "we have an incredible proposal." "What is it?" "The European Union wants to implement our model in all member countries." "Seriously?" "Absolutely. It would be the largest solidarity transportation project in the world." "So, and do you have the capacity to coordinate something like this?" "With your consulting, yes, sir." Michael accepted coordinating the European project as a consultant. It was another challenge in a life full of overcome challenges. The European project was implemented in 3 years and became a global model of social public policy. Michael received several honors from European governments. In one of these ceremonies in Brussels, he was questioned by a journalist. "Mr. Reynolds, at 70 years old, do you still have dreams?" "I have many dreams." "Which ones?" "I dream that one day we won't need projects like ours anymore because all of society will be naturally supportive." "Do you think that's possible?" "I think it's the natural path of human evolution. Each generation is more aware than the previous one." "And until then?" "Until then, we continue planting seeds of kindness and harvesting gardens of hope." Michael returned to New York City, satisfied with another mission accomplished. At 70 years old, he could look back and see a life well lived. One Sunday afternoon, he was at home with his family when Andrew arrived with a serious expression. "Michael, I need to tell you something." "What is it?" "The doctors found cancer. I have a few months to live." Michael was in shock. "Andrew, it can't be." "Unfortunately, it is. But I'm not sad, Michael." "How can you not be sad?" "Because I've lived a full life, because I made a difference in the world, because I have a family I love." "Andrew, let's look for the best doctors, the best treatments." "Michael, I already have. There's nothing to be done. But I don't want you to be sad." "How can I not be sad? You're my best friend, my brother, and I always will be, even when I'm no longer here physically." Andrew spent the last months of his life organizing the Foundation's transition and saying goodbye to all the people who had been important in his journey. On the day of his departure, he was surrounded by Michael, Mrs. Margaret, Emily, Samantha, and all the members of the family they had built together. "Michael," said Andrew in a weak voice, "thank you for stopping to help me 30 years ago. Thank you for changing my life. Take care of our family. Take care of our projects." "I will take care, Andrew. I promise. And continue doing good. The world needs people like you." The world needed people like you too. The world had them, and that's enough. Andrew closed his eyes for the last time, smiling. Andrew's funeral was a celebration of life. Thousands of people from all over the world came to pay their respects. There were moving accounts of lives he had touched and transformed. Michael gave the main speech. Andrew Wilson was much more than a friend to me. He was a teacher, a brother, an example of courage and determination. 30 years ago, when I found him on a sidewalk, he was lost and confused, but inside him was an incredible force waiting to be awakened. Andrew taught me that we all have that force within us. We just need someone to believe in us to awaken it. He left physically, but his legacy continues to live in every life we save, in every project we create, in every person we inspire. Andrew, thank you for being my best friend. Thank you for making my life extraordinary. After the funeral, Mrs. Margaret, now 87 years old, made a decision. Michael, I want to leave the entire family inheritance to the foundation. Mrs. Margaret, are you sure? Absolutely. It's what Andrew would have wanted. But it's many million, exactly. Millions that can save millions of lives. Mrs. Margaret's donation allowed the foundation to become completely self-sustaining and expand its projects even further. Michael, at 75 years old, assumed the presidency of the foundation in honor of Andrew. Everyone, he said in the first meeting as president, I take on this role with humility and determination. Humility because I know I have big shoes to fill. Determination because I know Andrew would expect us to keep growing and innovating. Our mission remains the same, to make a difference in people's lives through solidarity transportation. But our vision expands. We want to be a global example of how the private sector can solve social problems. Under Michael's leadership, the foundation continued to grow. By the age of 80, he had expanded the projects to all continents and created a network of over 100,000 volunteers worldwide. One Monday morning, Michael was in the office when he received a special call. Grandpa, it's Isabella. Isabella was his eldest granddaughter, Samantha's daughter, and was 25 years old. Hi, my dear. How are you? Good, Grandpa. I'm calling to share some news. What news? I've decided to quit my job at the marketing firm and dedicate myself to social projects. Really? Really? I want to create a solidarity transportation project specifically aimed at underprivileged college students. Michael was moved. Isabella, that's wonderful. I learned from you and Mom that money is a consequence, not a goal. And you have my full support, my dear. Thank you, Grandpa. You're my inspiration. Michael hung up the phone with tears in his eyes. The third generation of the family was following the same path of solidarity. At 85, Michael decided to write his final book, 50 Years Later, Reflections on a Life Dedicated to Good. In the book, he reflected on the entire journey since that morning on Broadway. When I stopped to help Andrew 50 years ago, I was a 43-year-old driver with no prospects. Today, at 85, I can say I've lived the life I always dreamed of living, even without knowing that was my dream. I learned that true wealth isn't in what we accumulate, but in what we give away. It's not in what we achieve for ourselves, but in what we manage to give to others. I learned that small gestures can have enormous consequences, that a single act of kindness can generate an endless chain of more kindness. I learned that it's never too late to start over, as Blackwood proved, that it's never too early to start making a difference, as my granddaughter Isabella proved. I learned that family isn't just those who share our blood, but those who share our dreams and values. But most of all, I learned that each of us has the power to change the world. We don't need to be rich, famous, or powerful. We just need to have the courage to do what's right. If my story inspires anyone to stop and help a stranger, to create a social project, to donate time or money to important causes, then my life will have been worthwhile. Because in the end, we take nothing material with us, but we leave behind the impact we've made on others' lives, and that impact is eternal. The book launch was a worldwide event. Michael, even at 85, traveled to several countries to promote the work. In every interview, the question was always the same. Mr. Michael, what is your greatest pride? And the answer was always the same. Knowing that when I'm gone, the work will continue, that you plant seeds that will grow forever. On his 86th birthday, Michael was surrounded by hundreds of people who had been touched by his story. The party was held at the Foundation's headquarters, decorated with photos of all the projects around the world. Everyone, Michael said in his speech. "Looking at you today, I see the true meaning of my life. It's not the awards I've received, not the books I've written, not the speeches I've given. It's this, people united by a common purpose to make the world better. Thank you to everyone who made my life extraordinary." Samantha stood up to speak. "Dad, on behalf of our entire family, I want to thank you for teaching us that life only has meaning when lived for others. You showed us that heroes aren't special people who do impossible things. Heroes are ordinary people who do the right things, and you are our hero." Michael moved, looked around and saw faces representing decades of working together. Emily, now 80 years old but still active in the foundation. Joseph, Blackwood, Amanda, Isabella, hundreds of employees and volunteers. "Do you know what my final dream is?" asked Michael. "What, Grandpa?" asked Isabella. "That when I'm gone, each of you continues to be a seed of kindness wherever you go. That each of you finds your own sidewalk, your own Andrew, your own opportunity to make a difference. Because that's what life is. A succession of opportunities to choose between good and evil, between helping and ignoring, between making a difference and going unnoticed. And you've already proven you know how to make the right choices." 3 years later, on a quiet Sunday morning, Michael passed away in his sleep at home, at 89 years old. He had by his bedside a photo with Andrew, taken on the day the Foundation's first ambulance was inaugurated. His funeral was a worldwide event. Representatives from over 100 countries came to pay tribute. There were moving accounts of millions of lives he had touched directly or indirectly. Samantha gave the main speech. "My father lived the fullest life anyone can live. He turned a simple gesture into a worldwide revolution of kindness. But more than that, he taught us that we all have the power to make a difference. Today, when Michael reunites with Andrew, they will be able to look back and see millions of lives saved, thousands of projects created, hundreds of countries transformed. But mainly, they will be able to see that they planted seeds that will continue growing forever. Dad, thank you for stopping on that sidewalk. Thank you for changing the world. Thank you for teaching us that it's worth living for others. Your legacy is eternal. Your story is immortal. Your example is inspiration. Rest in peace, knowing the work continues." After the funeral, the foundation team gathered to decide the next steps. "Everyone," said Samantha, "my father always said that the best compliment we can pay someone is to continue their work. So that's what we're going to do. We'll keep growing, innovating, helping. The Michael Reynolds and Andrew Wilson Foundation will perpetuate their legacy forever." Blackwood, now 70 years old, and having dedicated 20 years to social projects, stood up. "Samantha, I'd like to propose something." "What?" "That we create World Solidarity Transportation Day, to always remember the story your father and Andrew started." "That's a beautiful idea, Blackwood. And that we also create an annual award for people who do work similar to your father's, the Michael Reynolds Social Innovation Award." "Perfect." The proposal was approved unanimously. 1 year after Michael's passing, the first ceremony of the Michael Reynolds Social Innovation Award brought together representatives from 50 countries. The award was given to 10 people who had created projects inspired by Michael and Andrew's story. One of the awardees was Yuki Tanaka, the Japanese woman who had written to Michael years earlier. Her project to help lonely elderly people had spread throughout Japan and saved thousands of lives. "I received this award on behalf of all who were inspired by Mr. Michael's story," said Yuki in her speech. "He taught us that we don't need to wait for perfect conditions to start helping. His story proves that one man can change the world, when that man has the courage to do what's right. Thank you, Mr. Michael, for showing us the way." Today, 60 years after that morning on Broadway, the Michael Reynolds and Andrew Wilson Foundation operates on every continent, maintains over 10,000 Solidarity transportation vehicles, and has benefited more than 50 million people. The story of Michael and Andrew is taught in schools worldwide as an example of how small gestures can have significant consequences. On the sidewalk where it all began, there is a monument with an inscription. "Here began a revolution of kindness that transformed the world." Michael Reynolds stopped to help Andrew Wilson on date. From this decision, a global movement was born that proves we all have the power to make a difference. Every day, hundreds of people visit the monument and get inspired to start their own social projects. Isabella, now 40 years old and president of the foundation, keeps alive the tradition of visiting the monument every date to remember where it all started. "Grandpa," she always says, looking at the monument, "thank you for teaching us that life is only worth living when lived for others." His legacy continues to grow, his story continues to inspire, his example continues to transform lives. As long as there are people willing to stop and help strangers, as long as there are people wanting to make a difference in the world, his memory will be alive. And that, Grandpa, is forever. The story of Michael and Andrew proves that we all have within us the power to change the world. It just takes courage to do what is right, even when it's difficult. It just takes compassion to see the suffering of others. It just takes determination to turn small gestures into great movements. Because in the end, no matter how simple or ordinary we may feel, we all have a sidewalk waiting for us, an Andrew waiting for our help, an opportunity to make a difference. The question is not whether we have the ability to change the world. The question is whether we have the courage to try. End of story. And you, dear listener, what did you think of this story of overcoming and hope? Do you think Michael made the right decision by stopping to help Andrew that day? Comment below with your opinion and tell us if you have ever experienced a similar situation. Your participation is very important to our channel. Don't forget to leave your like and subscribe so you don't miss other inspiring stories like this one.